What's up, y'all? What's up? All right, listen, I'm gonna start doing my live streams. I'm gonna start off with um daily devotionals and reflections on the words of Jesus. If you're not religious, if you're not a Christian, it's all good. You don't even have to take it this way, but it's wisdom at the end of the day. It's personal development at the end of the day. Um, and I just think you know, this is good for anybody, regardless of your worldviews, regardless of what religion you're in, if you're even religious. So, anyways, I think I'm gonna read two of the daily devotionals because I'm behind, and so I got to catch up. So, this one was a good one. So, a familiar voice. When the shepherd has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. This is John, chapter 10, verse 4. And so this metaphor was a commonplace for the people in the Middle East. The shepherds didn't walk behind the sheep, herding them on. They walked in front and searching for grazing fields and shelter for the flock. The sheep didn't follow someone they weren't familiar with because they didn't know him. They followed their shepherd because they knew his voice. So followers of Jesus are like these sheep, not mindless, but familiar with the shepherd's voice. They know what his voice sounds like. They can distinguish his voice among a hundred other voices. How? Firstly, because the Spirit of Christ is in them. Secondly, because they spend a lot of time in his presence. There's no other way. They know his character and his voice, and he always remains the same. That whole Spirit of Christ is in them. How do they know? Because, there's times where I think of things and I think, man, what would Jesus do? What's up, Jeremy? I think to myself, man, what would Jesus do? Or I'll listen to an interpretation of a verse in the Bible, and I'm like, that's not Jesus's voice. That ain't what he meant by that. And I always thought to myself, like, how do I know that? And it's spiritual, man. It's just you have the Spirit in you, man. You can just sense it. You can just feel it. You just know better. And so, I might be interpreting, that wrong, but I don't think I am because that's my relationship with God, and I believe that's how it's interpreted. So here's the other one. Here's another one. This is a really good one, and this is a big one because this reminds me of, like, yesterday we were looking at the story of Rodney Hinton Jr., the father that tragic story. Son was killed by the police. He was running from the police. Apparently, he had a gun on him, and he ended up dying. He ended up getting shot. And it's very controversial. People are saying that the police overreacted. He was too quick to shoot. Other people are saying, man, if you were a police officer in that situation and you saw that beige gun, the guy was already running, and they knew he was armed. So they're gonna. At the end of the day, a police officer wants to get home to their family, and people are like, then don't take the job. It's easy to say that, but we need police officers, number one. And it's not like they're making millions to risk their lives every day. Most people wouldn't risk their life for their damn blood, let alone risk their life for a job. So it's much more complex than that. And I get the race stuff and all that, but I just think it's more complex than that. And as people, we need to be more empathetic to all perspectives. But this is about turning the other cheek. Listen to this. So if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Luke chapter 6, verse 29. The more violent society becomes, the more difficult these words of Jesus are. So true, man. So true. The more violent the world has gotten, it's so much more difficult. But you know how I talked about how discipline and living righteously, that's what defines how good of a man you are, what a real man is. And I talked about that because a woman said, a real man isn't someone that has access to a bunch of women and just sleeping around. And the guy's like, you sure about that? You know what I mean? And what I was saying is, like, real men, no matter how much power and wealth and resources and access to things that they have, real men have self-discipline. Because if they don't, too much of something, is their downfall. Look at Shannon Sharp. Look at how many people that we look up to in society that their um their worship of lust or their worship of money or their worship of power was their ultimate downfall, right? And you look at even like, and I can speak on this because I have family members who are doing a lot of time in prison who didn't have to be in the streets. But it's not about the money for a lot of times for these people. It's addiction to the lifestyle, to the power, to the quick money. And that's your downfall. And so it's the same thing here. The more violent society becomes, the more difficult the words of Jesus are. The secret to this truth is actually much bigger than we think. Jesus's intention is not to say, if you follow me, then you'll be a bunch of cowards. No, it's much greater, Jesus says. You don't need to resist evil people. Leave them to me. I will deal with them at the right time. Keep your hearts clean. Love others. Reject hatred and bitterness and resistance. I will judge righteously, purely and truthfully, according to each person's deeds and actions. No one who acts without love will escape God's wrath. You don't have to fray about the unfairness and evil in the world. I will handle it. And guys, man, I'm gonna leave it at that one because, man, it just taps into that video that I did about Rodney Hinton Jr. and the responses that I was getting. People clowning me because saying, nah, you gotta get him back. You gotta get your back. I ain't mad at him. I ain't mad at him for killing the police officer. Like, that whole family, you could tell from the videos, was destroyed by losing Tony Hinton's son. You could tell they come from a big, loving family. And that's why the father probably crashed out. But at the same time, we have responsibilities as a household. Number one, why is your son carrying a gun at 17, an illegal gun at 17? Why is he running from the police? And I got a response that somebody said, oh, if you black, you going to get shot anyways. No, stop it. Stop it. I'm not saying that that's not possible and that we haven't seen that before. But what I'm saying is, what would you rather your son do in that situation? Would you rather have him have a gun or not have a gun? Probably not have a gun. Would you rather him run from the police or not run from the police? Probably not run from the police. Would you rather him, did he steal that car? Like, people say that the car was stolen. Would you rather him be stealing cars or not? Like, we can't just glaze past it and start talking about race and stuff. We need to become wiser as men and fathers and the leaders of the next generation. So now you got a father who killed an innocent man, who was a retired police officer, who was working a crosswalk at a university for a high school graduation, apparently. The guy had nothing to do with the son who was killed. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even in the same police department when he wasn't retired. He was an off-duty retired officer from a whole entire department. From a whole entire police department. And we can't say we don't need police. How about we just defund the police entirely and see what happens to society? Of course we need police. Do we need police to be trained better? Sure. Do we need police not to be scared? Sure. I get all of those arguments. But to say, hey, I respect his get back, he got a police officer, that shit is stupid. It's trash. And you need God. And you need God. So now this father who was getting revenge for his son kills an innocent man. That man's family is destroyed. He might have been a father. He was a son. He might have been a husband. His whole family is destroyed, and his loved ones are destroyed. Your family was already destroyed because you lost your son. I saw the videos, man. You had a nice big family who was obviously loving. These people were crying, so emotional. It's a loving family. But now you gone too. But now you gone too. Bro, leave it to God, bro. Leave it to God. And so Gone Wandin says, what's up, bro? Um, I've been pulled over. I've been pulled over by police officers and they were super aggressive with me. I've been arrested and I go to court and they dismiss it because I was wrongfully arrested. I've been through all that shit. I get it. It's not like a white police officer looks at me and sees a white man. I've been through all that shit. I have a brother right now doing life in prison. I understand the justice system. I understand police can be assholes. I get it. And I I got the body cam of the police officer talking crazy to me, disrespectful with me. And the moment I asked the police officer, "Hey man, like I'm doing everything you asked me to do," they slammed me on the ground, bro. Strip me while I'm in handcuffs. Like cowards. I get it. I get it. But at the end of the day, these are humans wearing something. They don't define the entire, like, I don't want people defining me for being mixed and being a Hispanic. I don't want to be defined by my race. I want to be defined by the merit of my character. And so we have to keep pushing that agenda, even when people are trying to push back and make victims of us. I get it. But here's another thing, bro. I don't think you're thinking this through. He says, I think they should have at least a bachelor's degree to be a cop and have a gun like that. Why? Every person in America has the right to bear arms, number one. Number two, police officers ain't making bank. Unless they're doing crazy overtime hours, they're not making any real money, bro. Did you guys know that? So these people are risking their lives every single day. They're going through trainings, all of these things. And it's not like they're making bank. So then we're going to make them go to college too and get, we're not going to have any police officers. Who wants to be a police officer then? And I feel the same for teachers. But have faith in God, man. Have faith in God that He will pay these people back if they're not leading with love. And do your part too. And do your part too. Lawyer the hell up. Hire private investigators if you have to. Do whatever you got to do to make sure justice is served. But you can't crash out like this, man. Imagine the leadership in this country crashing out like that. We'd just be bombing everybody. It'd just be wars left and right. Can't do it, man. Can't do it. So I feel for that family and all that. And, you know, again, you know, you never know how you're going to react to something like that. So at the same time, I feel for that man, and I hope he gets the help that he needs. And I don't even want to see him do life in prison or nothing crazy like that. I want to see him get the help that he needs, because you never know how you're going to react to something like that, with your son being killed like that and seeing that on a body cam and stuff, especially if they do the investigation and they find that the kid didn't have the gun on him or wasn't pointing the gun at the man. But at the end of the day, we have to teach our children to respect the police, bro. Not run from the cops, not be carrying firearms, illegal firearms when you're 17 years old, bro. Not to be stealing cars. You know, like, how come we not discussing this as men who are leading the next generation? That's what I'm talking to my son about. Bro, you better never run from the cops. And be respectful. Make sure you're recording. Make sure you're recording the conversation. You're recording that. Call me when you get pulled over to let me know that you've been pulled over. And then immediately you should be recording. But you are respectful the entire time. Because you better believe daddy got the bread to lawyer the hell up and go after these people. I done beat the police before. I done took shit to court before. And I just don't understand what a degree would do to help a police officer. I don't think a degree, like, first of all, our education system sucks. But I do believe trainings on the job need to be more frequent. I do believe continued education needs to be a thing. Like, even as a barber, I'm a licensed barber, and we got to go to barber. We got to do an HIV course every single year and renew that course every single year, so that we're up on our HIV and our sanitation and our public safety. And I know police force has to go through training, and they do combat training, and they do shooting and all that stuff, but they have to be able to deal with people, bro, and not be scared of people. Now, it's never going to be a perfect system, but I'd rather have the situation we have now than what I see in the UK, where these police don't even have guns. They getting their asses whooped in the streets. They getting stabbed. They watching people get stabbed up because they can't do anything about it. Nah, I'm good. All right, let's move on to the next topic, man. I hope that I think that started a pretty good conversation here, and I wanted to get into some current events. Breaking news is look, we've seen Ukraine. We've seen and thank you for sharing this, by the way, Gonwandin, with the municipality requiring an associate's degree. An associate's degree might make sense, bro, but then we got to raise the pay for police officers. But an associate's degree might make sense, especially if they're having to take psychology, stuff like that, like entry-level courses for stuff like that. I like that idea. They out here sword fighting in London. That's what I'm saying. It's insane, bro. Like, if you're gonna kill me, don't slash me up, bro. I'd rather be it quick. Because y'all are out there. It look like medieval times in the UK right now, bro. Shout out to Finland, man. We doing good and everything. I got my shout out to Finland, but I have my what Finland does could never be done in America. We're just too big, and we didn't hit the lotto like you guys did in terms of macroeconomics. So, but Finland is doing good. The people are happy there. It's expensive as shit over there, but it's a beautiful country, man. And one of these days I want to visit. It's on my bucket list for sure. But it's apples and oranges to America. If Finland was the size of America, bro, they would be devastated. So with that being said, let's get into this new thing, because I was talking about, we've been covering a lot of geopolitics and global economics, and a lot of that is definitely influenced by war and shit, right? So I've been paying attention to like Ukraine and Russia, obviously Palestine and Israel. I don't know as much on that, and it's one of those things where you got to be careful on your claims and stuff. You really got to do your research on these topics. But now we have another thing. We know China and Taiwan has kind of been on edge, but now we have another thing going on, man. If we didn't have enough shit going on in the world, bro, now we have another thing going on, and that is India and Pakistan. And I have no idea what they're fighting about, but I have a video from Fox and I have a video from CNN. Fox tends to be more of a right-wing network, and CNN tends to be more of a left-wing network. And so we'll get two different opinions, and I'll do my own research while we're checking out, while we're getting informed by the news. But this is breaking news, man, because Pakistan apparently bombed India, and then India fired missiles at Pakistan. And they both have nuclear weapons. Ah, shit. All right, let's check this out.
India firing missiles into Pakistani-controlled territory overnight, reportedly killing at least 26 people in what Pakistani leaders are calling an act of war.
That's right, and the stakes could not be higher as both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. Lucas Tomlinson joins us now with more. Lucas.
Well, good early morning, Carly and Griff. The Indian government says it launched airstrikes against terrorist camps in Pakistan in retaliation for a terrorist attack in Kashmir 2 weeks ago that killed dozens of civilians, one of the deadliest massacres in decades. In a briefing to reporters, Indian officials say 9 targets were hit in Pakistan and on the Pakistani side of the disputed Kashmir region. Here's President Trump after learning about those strikes.
It's a shame. We just heard about it just as we were walking in the doors of the Oval. Just heard about it. I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of the past. They've been fighting for a long time. You know, they've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries, actually, if you really think about it. No, I just hope it ends very quickly.
Now, the dispute over Kashmir dates back to 1947, following the partition of British India into India and Pakistan. Both countries claim the entire Himalayan region. For decades, the area has been contested. The strikes overnight marked the deadliest encounter between nuclear-armed nations in over 5 years. At least 2 Indian fighter jets were reportedly gone down. Pakistan claims to have shot them down. Both India and Pakistan are bitter enemies and have fought several wars, the last one back in 1999. The Trump administration.
So real quick, what the regions that they were showing just now, you guys can see, it says Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, this is Kashmir. And one portion of Kashmir is administered by Pakistan. Another one is administered by India. And I guess China administered as well. Confusing as shit. But essentially, April 22nd, a terrorist attack in Pahalgam, Indian-administered Kashmir, somewhere in here, in this region, resulted in deaths of 26 civilians, including 25 tourists. The attack was claimed by the Resistance Front, a group linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, which India alleges are supported by Pakistan. And then, so then May 6th is when all this other shit went down.
Counter between nuclear-armed nations in over 5 years.
This caused India to retaliate.
At least 2 Indian fighter jets were reportedly gone down. Pakistan claims to have shot them down. Both India and Pakistan are bitter enemies and have fought several wars, the last one back in.
Did you hear that? That 2 fighter jets got shot down by Pakistan?
1999. The Trump administration is urging both sides to de-escalate the tension. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in a statement, quote, "I am monitoring the situation between India and Pakistan closely. I echo the president's comments earlier today that this hopefully ends quickly and will continue to engage both India and Pakistani leadership toward a peaceful resolution." And Pakistan has denied involvement in the terrorist attacks and said it would respond to the Indian airstrikes at a time and place of its own choosing. Griff, Carly?
Lucas Thompson live for us. Lucas, thank you so much. Let's bring in Chief Editor of the Middle East Forum, Jim.
You know, they're claiming that Pakistan is claiming that they had nothing to do with those attacks, those original terrorist attacks in Kashmir. And we know, I'm not saying that this is what India did, because I got a lot of research to do, obviously. But we've known in the past that even America has done this, where we will do stuff like this, where there will be casualties. And will make a story to make it an excuse for us to be able to attack, a certain country because of ulterior motives, right? I'm not saying that's what's going on here, but you have Pakistan claiming that they didn't support Lashkar and Jaish-e-Mohammed. But we also know that some countries will fund and support terrorist groups or resistance groups. They'll support them because they don't like the same country, or they have what's the word I'm looking for? Mutual enemies, right? And so they'll use these third-party groups that also don't like the India, for example, to attack India and then claim that they had nothing to do with it. I recently reacted to this whole thing with Mexico, the cartel, and what's going on with China. And China has, a huge drug trade with opiums, illegal opiums that are being sent over, right? And Mexico has the drug trade too. And it's like, they kind of have a common enemy now. And they don't like Trump. And the Mexican government doesn't like Trump, right? And so there could be a lot of corruption going on. And another thing that somebody said about what's going on with the cartel drug trade, drug war, where, Donald Trump, he's like, bro, let us put troops on the ground so we can help you get rid of these cartels. These are terrorists. And the Mexican president doesn't want boots on the ground from American soldiers in their territory. And some will say, it makes her look weak. But at the same time, is she scared of what American troops might see when they have boots on the ground? Will it expose some corruption? I don't know. But all of this shit, man, is scary. And you don't really know who to trust. You just have to hope that this does not escalate into a big-ass war. And again, Pakistan and India, from my understanding, both have nuclear weapons. It's tough, man. Let's continue.
From Jim Hansen. Jim, good morning to you. We're talking about an escalation in conflict between two nuclear-armed countries. How should we view this development, and what happens next?
Yeah,
I got you,
there's
Don
no
Wanda.
upside to any of this. This is not the first time that Pakistani terrorists inside of India. The Mumbai attacks were done by apparently one of the same groups that was involved with this. And India holds the Pakistani government responsible for the fact that those groups are allowed to operate and have safe haven in their country. So the idea that they would attack what was a camp they say was one of the ones involved in this is not surprising. What remains to be seen is how badly Pakistan feels they need to go ahead and retaliate, and will that escalate things into open conflict?
Jim, this sort of took everyone by surprise.
So India, they launched Operation Sindoor, which was missile strikes targeting 9 locations in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. So that top half of Kashmir that we saw, that was Pakistan territory. That's where India attacked. And they said that they were targeting the terrorist infrastructure, and it was a response to the attack in April 22nd. And the casualties, Pakistan reports 26 died. So the same as that's crazy, because it's the same. 26 civilians died in the April 22nd attack that Pakistan allegedly did on India. And India's attack resulted in 26 deaths as well of Pakistan civilians, including children. 5 people were killed due to the Indian artillery shelling. So Pakistan condemned the strikes as an act of war and claimed to have shot down 5 Indian fighter jets and a drone. Damn.
Obviously, that follow global events here in the U.S. And now, as you point out, we have 2 nuclear-armed countries with a long history of war. How concerned are you that this escalates?
These guys have been butting heads for, if you look at the Hindus and Muslims fighting in that area, for thousands of years. But if you look at just the India and Pakistan since 1947. So they have an ongoing dispute over Kashmir, the entire region. One of the more interesting things, they have a border crossing there where every day the 2 countries have their militaries dress up, and they have essentially a dance off. They have a conflict of parade, where there are bleachers on both sides. The tourists come and watch. This is a kind of a low simmering boil at all times. Now the fact that there was a terrorist attack killing dozens of tourists in India, and now the retaliation inside of Pakistan, that could definitely reach a much higher boil if this doesn't stop soon.
Yeah, well, if this does escalate, we have good relations with India mixed with Pakistan. What does U.S. involvement look like?
Good question.
There's been a shift over the past few years where Pakistan has begun aligning more tightly with China, and India has been aligning more tightly with the United States, both in the military hardware they buy and in overall relations. India is one of the countries that President Trump is most likely to make a trade deal with in the near future. So I think we have a large
We've been
amount
covering
of if not influence, at least connectivity with India and less with Pakistan. We've been removing ourselves from them. So hopefully we can, convince the Indians that this does not need to turn into another war. We've got a land war in Europe that's been going on for 3 years. The Middle East is still on fire. We do not need the two large countries there with nuclear weapons turning this into even a more dangerous situation.
Facts.
Jim, let me just.
All right, let's go over to CNN and see what they're saying about this story.
From Indian military strikes on Pakistan, raising fears that two nuclear-armed rivals are moving closer to war. A Pakistani military spokesperson tells Reuters at least 26 civilians have been killed and 46 injured. India claims to have targeted terrorist infrastructure in several locations inside Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. India insists its missile strikes were, quote, focused and precise and designed to be non-escalatory in nature. But Pakistan rejects that claim. Pakistan also says it shot down 5 Indian Air Force jets and a drone. CNN cannot independently confirm those claims. And this just in, according to a senior Indian defense source, Pakistani shelling in Indian-administered Kashmir has now killed 8 people. These back-and-forth attacks come about 2 weeks after gunmen massacred 26 tourists in Indian-administered Kashmir.
That was
India
gunmen.
quickly accused Pakistan of supporting terrorists in the region. Pakistan denied any responsibility. The two sides have also been exchanging shelling and gunfire across their disputed border. This is the first time since 2019 that India has struck inside Pakistani territory. The attacks in Punjab province are the deepest since the 1971 war. And we want to go live now to CNN's Paula Hancock's following developments from Abu Dhabi. Good to see you, Paula. So what is the latest on these developments in the wake of India's military strikes on Pakistan?
Well, Rosemary, India says that it carried out these strikes in the early hours of Wednesday morning, starting at 1:05 a.m., and they say that they lasted 25 minutes. Now, from the Indian side, we are hearing that they made sure they did not target civilians or any economic or military infrastructure. From the Pakistan side, we are hearing that simply wasn't the case. So first of all, a statement from the Indian Defence Ministry. They said, quote, "Our actions have been focused, measured and non-escalatory in nature. No Pakistani military facilities have been targeted. India has demonstrated considerable restraint in selection of targets and method of execution." But what we are hearing from the Pakistan side is that civilians and also mosques have been targeted. Officials saying that some 6 locations these strikes took place and at least 26 were killed. They say civilians, including children, at least one as young as 3 years old also.
Yeah, so you see from both sides, from both perspectives, and then I did a little bit of research. And so here's what I'm finding out is the current situation. Both nations have increased military readiness along the line of control, the LLC. And India has conducted civil defense drills across multiple states, and Pakistan has authorized its armed forces to undertake corresponding action in response to India's strikes. Like, they're starting to ramp up their military defense. Airspace and civilian impact. Let's listen to this. Pakistan has closed its airspace for 48 hours, leading to the cancellation and diversion of hundreds of flights in the regions. Civilians near the border areas are seeking shelter amid fears of further escalation. And then the international reactions, we were listening to the news, so we're getting some of that reaction, but global leaders, including those from the United States, the United Nations, Russia, and China, have expressed deep concern over escalating tensions and have called for immediate de-escalation and dialogue between the two countries. So it's not just the United States that's calling for it. China wants to see this resolved. Russia, we don't want more shit going on. China's already got their own problems to deal with. Russia's obviously got their own problems to deal with. This shit is getting overwhelming, and nobody wants to focus on the Middle East right now when all of these regions are in disputes, right? And so, some of the underlying issues is, number one, we know from the Kashmir disputes, but multiple wars between Pakistan and India have happened since their partition in 1947. And so, the recent events have just further strained relations over disputed territories like Kashmir. And we're seeing wars happen left and right, it feels like, over disputed territories that were the result of other wars. So it's almost like when wars finish and territories are given out and stuff, it's a temporary fix for something that's going to blow up in our face later on. We got to learn from this stuff, right? And we're just like kicking the can down the road, and it's our kids and our kids' kids that got to deal with it once it gets bloated, right? And so other underlying issues is water resources. So India's suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty and subsequent actions affecting river flows have added another layer of tension as water resources are critical for both nations. So it's not just territory they're fighting over. India made some decisions that affect basic needs, basic human needs in Pakistan. So I can see tensions rising because of that. And then you have the nuclear concerns because both countries possess significant nuclear arsenals, apparently, with India holding approximately 172 nuclear warheads and Pakistan has about 170. The risk of escalation into a nuclear conflict has raised alarms internationally. And so the situation, it remains volatile, obviously, with both India and Pakistan standing firm on their respective positions. The international community continues to urge restraint and resumptions of the diplomatic dialogues to prevent further escalation. So, now this story is just getting started. I am praying this shit don't go crazy. But we also, as entrepreneurs, as family men, as people who are responsible for a lot of things, we have to make sure that our home is going to be okay. And so we're going to be paying attention to how this affects the economy as well, and how this is going to affect our businesses and our money and our jobs and all of this, and real estate, because these conflicts do affect that. So that's all I got for now with this whole Pakistan-Indian war. Let's get into real estate a little bit because Ganwandon, you asked about how I feel about real estate. The way I look at it right now is I think the real estate market is kind of frozen and it's cracking a bit and it's almost declining in terms of if you're selling a house, unless you're giving a great deal or something that is in high demand in a certain city. I'm not saying this is happening in all cities, but in most major cities, this is what's happening. If you put your house for sale, it's not gonna sell. And if it does sell, it's not for the price you wanted. Or you're gonna have to meet them at the table with closing costs. You're gonna have all kinds of conditions that make it favorable for the buyer. Right now, it's not great for buyers because there's so much uncertainty, and it's definitely not great for sellers because of the uncertainty. And so what you're seeing is interest rates start to drop because literally the real estate market is frozen and it's beginning to crack. And that's part of why, Trump wants the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, because when you lower interest rates, you increase demand. There's a lot of supply that's going out there. And with what's going on with mortgage rates increasing, not mortgage rates increasing, interest rates, because believe it or not, people have not learned their lessons and there's a lot of adjustable rate mortgages out there. The other thing is insurance rates are skyrocketing and people are being surprised when their escrow is like, hey, you owe us money, or hey, your mortgage went up from $2,000 to $3,000 overnight. And then property taxes are skyrocketing as well overnight. I've got two mortgages that in the past 2 years, both collectively have gone up $3,000. It's insane. And thank God I do well for myself. But most Americans are getting crushed right now by their mortgages because of property taxes and insurance rates skyrocketing, and they weren't informed, they weren't ready, they didn't know that this was possible, and they're being surprised by it. And there's a record high number of mortgages that are behind right now. And so you have people who are going to have to sell their homes. So supply is going to go up. The current supply isn't selling. The demand isn't growing because interest rates are still high, right? And then you have this whole trade war where unemployment is probably going to go up. You got the government doing job cuts. It is insane, but it's kind of a necessary evil, unfortunately, because we've been just printing money. We've been living the high life. Consumption has been insane. People have been shopping Amazon packages at the house every single day. Temu, Shein. People have just been spending money. Vacations, credit cards are maxed out. And so it's like, dude, at some point, we have to stop this consumption. At some point, we have to take care of not just the federal deficit, the debt that we're in, but the consumer debt that we're in at some point. And what I see is if the Federal Reserve doesn't start doing something to manipulate the economy, and they don't know what to do at the same time because the Federal Reserve is getting crushed from all angles. And they're just kind of waiting it out, taking more pain until something flashes in front of them and says, okay, this is the lever we got to pull. Because right now, everything looks crazy. And you have economists and people be like, Chris, you're not an economist. Bro, I am a businessman. I own a portfolio of businesses that do 8 figures a year. I import, I export, I have brands, I do paid advertising, I have employees, I have an accounting firm. I am very aware of I am literally affected by this shit every single day. More so than politicians. There's politicians that pass laws that ain't never hired somebody, ain't never built a business before, ain't never had to take on debt, ain't never did shit besides be a career-long politician. You're trying to tell me they know more of what's better for me than I do? No thanks. I'll take my perspective over theirs. And what I'm saying is nobody really knows what's going on. For every economist that says, the market's going to crash, there's an economist that will say the market's stable, and there's an economist that will say the market's going to continue to grow. But from my perspective, what I'm seeing, and I'm telling you this, look, I don't have it here with me, but I have products that are distributed all over the world with some of the biggest billion-dollar companies in the world, like Conair, right? And I'm telling you, we're increasing our prices because the tariffs are kicking our asses. And if we're increasing our prices, I know there's a lot of other brands that have tried everything to keep prices down, and they have to increase prices. So I know inflation's growing. I know job cuts are happening. We see what Doge is doing. We see UPS cutting jobs. We see the shipment yards slowing down. 35% of shipments that go to these ports are down. It's a lot of shit going on, and no one really knows what's going on. We're not going to know for a few months. We're not going to know for a few months until reports start getting printed and we see what's really going on. Because what happened in the first quarter of this year, that's not taking into account all of the crazy shit that's gone on. But we do see interest rates have dropped a bit. And so we just got to keep paying attention to what's going on. With that being said, let's listen to CNBC talk about the real estate market. I gave you guys my position on it before it was influenced by whatever CNBC is gonna tell us now. And then I'll give you guys, if my mind has changed, if I got a clearer view of what's going on. So hopefully I didn't confuse you guys. Hope you guys understand what I'm talking about here. And let's listen to CNBC to see what they got to say.
Shift coming right in the heart of the spring housing market, something we haven't seen in quite a while. Diana Olick joins us right now with more. And what's the shift that we're seeing right now, Diana?
Well, Becky, it's prices. They are still gaining slightly, but they are slowing down quickly. And in several major markets, they are now lower compared with a year ago. Take a look at these numbers from Parcel Labs, which runs real-time price data. Miami, Atlanta, Tampa, San Francisco, Nashville, and Minneapolis are now negative year over year in prices. And Austin, a major pandemic migration market, is tanking. Other large markets like Phoenix and Denver, they're right on the verge of being in the red. Now, another report from Redfin showed home sellers gave concessions to buyers in 44% of sales
Did I not tell you? As a seller, you got to come to the table, baby.
Transactions in Q1 of this year. That's up from 39% a year earlier and just shy of the 45% record high.
Record high 45%. So, like I said, if you are a seller, you probably got to cover closing costs. You probably got to fix things for people. You probably the realtors, they probably got to give up some of their commission to make these deals go through because there's no buyers.
High at the start of 2023. Those include money toward repairs, closing costs, and or mortgage rate buydowns, but not price cuts. Now, something else in the March numbers. The median price of a newly built home.
Isn't that the number I always use, 400,000? You just a barber, Basio. You just a barber. You don't know what you're talking about.
Was slightly lower than that of an existing home, and there is usually a price premium for new construction, so that's not normal. Part of this is builders lowering prices and offering more low-priced homes, and still a relatively tight and overpriced existing home market. Now,
so this is not normal in the general economy, right? But this was the case back in 2008. I bought my first house during that time in 2012, actually, where houses were still, it was pretty much the bottom of the real estate market in 2012. It started in 2008 and the bottom happened in 2012. And during that time, new homes were cheaper than existing homes. So I remember this being a thing. It's not normal, but this is a sign.
Now, remember, home prices are up over 50% in just the last 5 years, which again is something else, not exactly normal. So even with builders cutting prices and more supply coming on the existing home markets, buyers have hit the pause button right at the height of the all-important spring market. Becky?
Why do you think buyers are pausing? Does it have anything to do with mortgage rates, or is it more related to uncertainty and concern about what might be happening with their jobs?
It's all of the above. In fact, we were at an open house in Dallas yesterday, and I spoke with several buyers who said, you know, they like the house. There's plenty out there. They have the money to do it, but they're just hitting the pause button because they're nervous. They're nervous about what kind of other of their costs are going to go up due to inflation. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about the broader economy. And they're saying, you know, we're out shopping. We're looking. We love it. Just can't pull the trigger.
I guess part of it is watching mortgage rates. I don't know if people expect rates to come down, if they think the Fed's going to be forced to cut rates at some point, if they've watched particularly what's happened recently with rates climbing higher, just from concerns all the way around.
No, actually, mortgage rates weren't as big a factor, and I was surprised at that. I think people are getting used to this new normal of the kind of above 6%, around 7%, because mortgage rates have really been kind of teetering in this very narrow range between 6.7 and 7.1% really over the last year. They said it's not necessarily the mortgage rate, it's that overall uncertainty about how they feel about their own personal wealth. Remember, as I always say, a home is most people's single largest investment, and it's really hard to make that payment when you're worried about the rest of your economic situation.
Man. So like I was telling you guys
in today's video, I'm going to give you a housing market.
You know, like I was telling you guys, they feeling it from everywhere, from all corners, right? And so my outlook right now is I'm not panicking. You know, I would still I've been buying real estate for the past 4 years because people have been talking like this about real estate for the past 4 years. Right. And the way I look at it is, look, I'm going to keep buying because as long as I am bankable, I can always make adjustments. If I would have listened to everybody, to the news and stuff back in 2020, I think it was, I wouldn't have bought real estate. That piece of property that I bought for $500,000 is now worth $830,000. So even if that house dips in price 10%, 20%, I'm still in the green. Number one. Number two, if it dips, it's okay because I locked in a very low interest rate. I think my interest rate's like 3%, 3.2%. I will never get rid of that mortgage. And then the following year, when prices had already skyrocketed, I purchased again at 7% interest rates. And 3 years later, there's equity in that property. It's had some slight appreciation, but I'm probably going to lose that appreciation pretty soon. But I still have a lot of equity in it because I've been paying for it for 3 years. And so I have a little bit of a buffer there, number one. Number two, if the market gets bad, interest rates have to drop. And now I can refinance that property as long as it's not underwater. And I don't think it will be. I don't think home prices are going to come crashing 20%, 30%, or 50%, right? But if interest rates drop because of what's going on in the real estate market, and they have to drop, if the real estate market starts cracking and our economy starts cracking, they have to lower interest rates to increase consumption. And so when they lower those interest rates, guess what? That house that I bought for 7% interest, I can now refinance, and now my mortgage is lower, and that house cash flows even more because I'm into the property long term. I'm not trying to flip the house. I'm trying to hold it for 20, 30 years. And so that's actually a benefit to me if the prices come down, because interest rates have to come down. And the reason why prices come down is because there's no demand for the supply. You guys get what I'm saying? So as an investor, you just have to have an exit plan always. And as long as you go into a deal with an exit plan, you should keep investing. The real investors stay in the market, especially when everybody's fearful. That's where the money's made. But most people can't stay in the market when everyone's fearful because they can't afford to. And this is why I always tell people, whatever your main thing is, man, you need to be the best at it. You need to make as much money as you can from your job, from your W-2, from your 1099, from the business that you own, because that will afford you during times of wealth redistribution, because that's what happens during these crazy recessions and stuff. A lot of opportunity will be in front of you, but it's only the people who remain bankable during tough times, who aren't pretenders, so that when tough times comes, they're still able to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them. And so that's why I still invest in real estate. Now, I haven't bought anything this year because I didn't buy anything. I don't plan on buying anything this year because I just think there's way too much going on, and I plan on buying my dream home come 2026 once my lease is up here. But that's my own personal plan. This is why it's important to be informed, to understand how all this stuff works, because no financial plan, I'm not trying to give you guys financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but no financial advisor can give you the perfect tailored plan for you, especially if you're knowledgeable, bro. Okay, so that's how I feel about the housing market right now, and we'll keep paying attention to this, obviously, as the fundamentals change, and I'll keep you guys up to date, man. Yeah, Wanda. So you see the beauty of it. People need to wake up to the real estate game for sure, man, for sure. I have $4 million in real estate that I bought in the past few years, so. I've been buying real estate since 2012. Love real estate, but I love the stock market even more, believe it or not. And I love business. I love businesses more than anything. That's the real hack is if you can start and run a business, that's the real game changer. All right, cool. Let's continue on to the next thing. We've tapped into the real estate market. We've tapped into what's going on with Pakistan and India. Oh, that's what I wanted to look up. So Taiwan Semiconductor Company, I'm trying to see if this is a good investment, because one of the things that scared me about TSM in the past was that was that there's so much tension with America that if China was to invade Taiwan and take over, that would be catastrophic for investors in TSM. But one of the things that I love that TSM is doing is they're running a factory in America. They're moving they're expanding to facilities in America. And so that gives America more involvement in what's in Taiwan. And I think it makes it, a little bit more of a hesitancy for China to go and invade because of how involved the United States is with Taiwan. So I wanted to get informed on this because it's obviously going well. They had initially announced these facilities that TSM was going to, Taiwan Semiconductor Company is TSMC. Okay, TSM for short. They just launched their third factory in Arizona, and the original one was like 6 months ago. So let's hear what's going on here, and then I want to look at the financials of that company, and then you guys can learn a little bit of how I study the financials and whether or not I think this is a good investment, and if I'm going to look at maybe buying 100 shares, doing some covered calls on it, or maybe I'm looking to sell some puts on it, and then at the right price, I can acquire it if it's a good company that I want, okay?
On its third semiconductor fabrication plant. This is part of TSMC's massive expansion plan in Arizona.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick visited the site as part of the announcement. Troy Hayden is joining us now in studio with the big developments. Hey, Troy.
Yeah, big development, all right, big project. TSMC project in North Phoenix is the biggest direct foreign investment ever made in the United States. In an interview with CNBC this morning, Secretary Lutnick announced that TSMC got the permits it needed to build that third fab plant, Fab 3, and within just a few hours, construction crews were already at work.
So it's a whole of government approach. So a company commits to building in America, but it takes too long to get permits, to get regulations, to get everything done. So we're going to move it. We're going to move it forward. And what you saw today is they needed a couple of permits. We got those permits super fast. And here we go. They're building it. So that's the idea. Get people to work. Get these factories being built now.
Yeah, and that yellow building you see right there is Fab 2 that's already under construction. Fab 1 is already making chips. Fab 3 will make the world's most advanced microchip, a 2-nanometer chip. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter. TSMC says these chips provide a 10 to 50% boost in computing speed and use less energy. TSMC is also working on even more advanced chips that will be made here in the Phoenix area. So they plan to build additional fabs at that facility. Also has plans for 2 packaging plants. That's where they get the chips ready for different uses, and also an R&D center on that same campus. So for the next decade and beyond, the Valley should be the hub of microchip manufacturing here in the U.S. with all those jobs that go with that. So Mark Uribe, back to you.
All right, good stuff.
Yeah, so that's a good sign. There's an hour-long documentary on TSMC that I might watch before I even look at doing an investment, even if I like the financials. But I also want to see what analysts believe, what they think about TSMC. And apparently, Warren Buffett a year ago talked about it, and they said they would never buy it. But it's a long video. Let's see if it's worth watching.
Substantial position in Taiwan Semiconductor, and contrary to its normal holding timeline, sold almost the entire position within a few short months. While you cited in a CNBC interview that geopolitical issues were the catalyst, these issues were seemingly no different when you acquired that stock. So what else, if anything, changed in those few months and prompted the firm to offload close to $5 billion worth of Taiwan Semiconductor shares?
Taiwan Semiconductor. In my latest article on Taiwan Semiconductor, managed companies and important companies in the world, and there is not, and I think you'll be able to say the same thing 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. I don't like its location, and reevaluated that. I mean, I don't think it should be any place but Taiwan, although they will be obviously opening up chip capacity in this country. And actually, one of our subsidiaries that we got in Allegheny is participating in their Arizona construction activities. But it's a question of, we would rather have the same kind of company, and there's nobody in the chip company, there's no in the chip industry that's in their league, at least in my view. And the man that was a 91-year-old or so that connected with it, that I think I played bridge with, and in Albuquerque, and the marvelous people, marvelous company, but I'd rather find a marvelous people, and I won't find it in the chip industry, but marvelous people and marvelous competitive position and everything. I'd rather find it in the United States. I feel better about the capital that we've got deployed in Japan than in Taiwan. I wish it weren't so, but I think that's a reality, and I've reevaluated that in the light of certain things that were going on. Charlie?
Tell them the story of the Japanese investment. That should be told again. That's a nice story.
Well, it was pretty simple. I mean, back when I started, other people were going through Playboy, and I was going through Moody's, basically. And there's a movie out called Turn Every Page, which I saw again for the second time a couple of days ago, Lizzie Gottlieb, and I recommend everybody in this world watch that, because I turned every page in the past. And I did it for thousands and thousands of pages in Moody's, and I did it at the Department of Public Utilities in Boston. I did it in the insurance department. You just kept turning pages. Well, that goes on for a while, but now we need big ideas in order to find things. And what was your question, Charlie?
Tell them about the Japanese.
Well, the Japanese thing was simple. I mean, I like looking at companies. I like looking at figures about companies, and here were 5 very, very substantial companies, understandable companies. Most of them, maybe all of them, we'd done business with in a dozen different ways. If you go a couple miles from where this place is, our last coal generating plant was built by one of the companies. So here they were sitting as a group where they were earning, we'll say 14% on what we were going to pay to buy them. They were paying decent dividends. They were going to repurchase shares in some cases. They owned a whole bunch of businesses that we could understand as a group, although we didn't mean we had deep understanding on any, but we seen them operate and everything. There wasn't anything to it. And at the same time, we could take out the currency risk by financing in yen, and that was going to cost us 0.5%. Well, if you get 14% on one side and 0.5% on the other side, and you've got money that, forever, and they're doing intelligent things, and they're sizable. So we just started buying them. I didn't even probably tell Greg until maybe 6 months after we'd gotten going. And then when we hit 5% in all of them, we announced on my birthday and at 90th that we owned over 5%. And
you guys a little bit of perspective here. So the reason why they sold Taiwan was because they just didn't like the location it was in. And that's part of my challenge too, right? Is damn, it's in Taiwan and you have these geopolitical tensions with China and Taiwan. But at the same time, since this interview, and they mentioned that Taiwan had been planning on opening plants in Phoenix, well, they've done it. And now they're on their 3rd plant in Phoenix. And they're doing their 4th by 2027. And so I need a better idea of, why hasn't that changed their minds? If they knew they were going to get into it, maybe they didn't believe they could do it, and that's why they pulled out. But they're doing it now, right? And not just doing it, they're on their third plan. And so I don't know what percentage of, their manufacturing is done in America, if it's even enough to sustain the company's numbers in case China was to invade, let's say. But nonetheless, are you willing to bet on that? You got to have some conviction, right? And so we got to do some research on that. And so this is what I've learned, okay? TSM is the world's largest contract chip maker. It produces over 90% of the most advanced semiconductors. Taiwan's proximity, the geopolitical risk is that Taiwan's proximity to China and the ongoing cross-strait tensions pose potential risk to TSM's operations by extension. Global tech supply chains, right? That would affect the entire world if something was to happen. I don't know that the stock price on this would be my main concern. It would affect every company. Guys, these chips, there are thousands of chips in one car. There are thousands of chips in your house right now. It will affect supply chains globally, not just in tech, but anything that requires some type of chip, some type of logic, right? And so, it would affect a lot of companies. Like China would really have to crash out to go and say, all right, it's time to go after Taiwan. And that's why America's working so hard with Taiwan to expand its production, its manufacturing in the States where it would be safe. And so TSM, their first fabrication plant in Phoenix began the production of the 4-nanometer chips in early 2025, marking a significant step in diversifying its manufacturing base. The company plans to build additional fabs, which we already know. TSM has committed to investing $165 billion in U.S. operations, including the construction of multiple of plants and R&D centers. Okay, so here's the biggest challenges with the U.S. expansion, and I think this is why Buffett didn't believe they could do it. And I've mentioned this many times during the whole trade war. Oh, America just wants cheap labor. America just wants cheap labor. It wasn't just about cheap labor. China had the most skilled engineers, some of the most skilled factory workers and engineers in the world. And it's not just that they had skilled workers, because we have skilled workers too. It's that they had a shit ton of skilled workers. So you could scale in China like you couldn't scale in America. And I brought that up and people said I was stupid. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a barber. But listen to this. The challenges in TSM's U.S. expansion, number one, skilled labor shortage. Oh. So TSM has encountered difficulties finding sufficient skilled workers in the U.S., leading to delays and the need to bring in experienced technicians from Taiwan. So we're migrating people over from other countries like Taiwan, like India, all of these places to come work these high-paying skilled jobs because we don't have Americans who want to do these jobs. They go to college to learn a bunch of shit and get in a bunch of debt for jobs that don't even pay well. And at the same time, we have all of these Democrats that want us to pour more money into our broken education system, our broken jobs market, and then you got far left people, extreme left people who want free education, so they want our tax dollars to be dumped into something that's not going to help grow our economy. These are high-paying jobs, great jobs, but we don't have enough sufficient skilled workers to keep up with them. And so it's literally delaying the expansion of TSM to diversify their plants here in America, which is a global economic issue. The other challenge, so that was the first challenge. The second challenge is the cultural differences. So the company has faced cultural and operational challenges in adapting in its management practices to the U.S. workforce. We have way more regulation here. That's the other part. When it comes to workforce, we have way more regulation. That's going to increase costs. The unions, all of these things, it's going to increase costs. All of these regulations, all of these things, the permitting, like depending on what state you're in, it's insane how long it takes just to get permitting to start building your business, right? And I get it. It's for good reason. I'm not saying get rid of regulation. I'm just saying we have to build efficiencies because there's so many inefficient practices that our government does to regulate that it's not productive for our economy. Okay. And then I've already touched on this, but regulatory hurdles. So the cultural differences, what they're used to, and it kind of already plays into the regulatory hurdles. That's why I brought it up. Navigating U.S. construction regulations and permitting process. Look, I didn't even see that point, and I brought it up because that is a problem. And we want more regulation on small business owners. You got all of these people who are center left or left that want all of these regulatory things. They want more regulation, and it's affecting. But at the same time, we want better jobs. We want higher jobs. We want higher pay, all of these things. And people don't realize that these regulations, these extra hurdles are predatory to that growth, to what people ultimately want, okay? We have to figure out a better balance. And so construction regulations and permitting processes has contributed to project delays. Now that I'm learning this, so this is the conclusion. So while TSM expansion in Arizona is a strategic move to mitigate geopolitical risk and diversify its manufacturing base, the transition is complex and fraught with challenges. Given that a significant portion of TSM's advanced chip production remains in Taiwan, concern about potential disruptions due to geopolitical tensions are valid. So let me look at this, okay? How many chips are being produced in America now versus Taiwan, and what is the projection for future growth in production done in the USA? Let's see what it comes up with. Uh-oh, I didn't mean to do that. Hello. Okay, cool. I accidentally clicked pause. Can you guys confirm that you guys can still, that I didn't mess this up? You guys can still see me and hear me? I pushed the button I wasn't supposed to. So let's take a look at this. As of 2025, the United States is actively expanding the semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. So look, semiconductor chips have soared. I don't know why that X is there, but production in general has come down. That's the TSM Arizona plants. So the current capacity, the U.S. accounts for approximately 12% of global semiconductor manufacturing capacity, a decline from 37% from 1990. I wonder what happened there. Probably policies, probably the people we voted for, right? Advanced chip production. The U.S. currently produces a minimal share of the world's most advanced chips, those below 10 nanometers, okay? There's a 4 nanometer chip that's being produced right now in Arizona. TSM has begun small-scale production so it's literally just in the beginning. Apple plans to source over 19 billion chips from U.S. factories in 2025. That's a good sign. Global share. Taiwan, primarily through TSM, produces about 92%. We know that already. Let me see if I can get some real numbers here. All right, so U.S. expansion goals. This is what I was looking for. The U.S. aims to increase its share of global advanced semiconductor manufacturing to 22% by 2030. Shit. It's a long time. So the CHIPS Act, which is government policy, has spurred over $327 billion in private investments, with companies like Intel, TSMC, and Micron expanding U.S. operations. So I want to see what the CHIPS Act is. I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. But 22% of manufacturing in the world by 2030, it still makes it a huge concern with China. Are you willing to make that bet? And so what you have to do with the information you're getting so far is you have to write down all of the stocks that you love. And you have to write down the pros and cons. And then you have to make a decision, because there's an opportunity cost. For every dollar you put into TSM, with the risk, knowing the risks that are there, that's $1. Thank you guys for the confirmation. But that's $1 that you can't put into NVIDIA, which you might think is a better company to invest in, right? Taiwan's share of advanced semiconductor production expected to decrease to 58% by 2030, as other countries, including the U.S., ramp up domestic production. So 2030 is a big year. So the challenges ahead is building semiconductors are significantly more expensive in the U.S. and more time-consuming than in Taiwan due to high labor costs and regulatory hurdles. We got to, at least for semiconductors, man, we have to do something about regulation. Okay, so what is the CHIPS Act impact? Not impact, what is the CHIPS Act? Oh, here it goes. It's going to tell me anyways. All right, so the CHIPS and Science Act, enacted in August 2022, is a landmark U.S. federal initiative aimed at revitalizing domestic semiconductor manufacturing, enhancing national security, and reducing reliance on foreign chip production. So TSM might not be, it sounds like, between Apple, TSM, and other companies, we plan on creating more chips in America, not just with TSM. So what other companies are going to expand on this? And is there an opportunity there? Total authorized funding, approximately $280 billion, with $52 billion specifically allocated for semiconductors manufacturing. Yeah, so there's $39 billion in subsidies to encourage construction. That's good. There's $13.7 billion in R&D, and there's a 25% tax credit for capital expenses related to semiconductor manufacturing. So they expect 115,000 manufacturing construction jobs to be created from this, and obviously, jobs related to the semiconductor workforce. All right, cool. So who passed this act? Was it Biden administration? Yeah, it was Biden. And he don't get no credit for this, but this was a great policy to pass. This was a great bill. Yeah. Good job, Biden. He didn't, there's a lot of shit he didn't do right, but he did this right. All right, so aside from, let's do some more research here. Aside from TSMC, who else is expanding chip manufacturing that isn't affected by geopolitical conflicts? In the USA or in regions that isn't affected by geopolitical conflicts. Let's see what it says. We're doing real investing research live. Most people charge for this shit. You got to join their course, their program, right? Which there's a lot of great programs. I took 1,000 of them. That's how I've learned so much, right? And I own my own businesses, so I have Micron. All right, so here are some companies. So like you can invest in TSM, But here's some competitors that you might want to invest in instead. All right, let's take a look at this. You have Intel. They have expansion in Ohio. They invested at least $20 billion, and they're expected to begin production in 2025. And they also have a partnership within Arizona. Okay, you have Samsung, $40 billion in Texas. Samsung is huge, but they're not an American company. So, is Intel? I believe Intel is. You have Micron, $15 billion in Idaho, and $100 billion in New York. You have Global, whatever the hell, Foundries, Texas Instruments. Okay, and so now what I want to know is what percentage of, and what's the word that they were, advanced, because that's the key right here. Advanced semiconductors chips do each of these companies produce? What is their forecast in production growth? And which ones are public companies and their stock tickers? Because then we can go start look at financials of each of these companies. You guys learning some stuff here or not really? I nerd out on this stuff. To me, this is like fantasy football, But you can get rich. You can get real rich off of this. You can make some money from fantasy football. You can get real rich off of this. All right, so let's take a look at this. So obviously we know TSMC 90%, okay? Intel in advanced chip manufacturing has diminished, with the company trailing behind TSM and Samsung. Their revenue is going to be 11 to 12 billions, ongoing efforts to improve operational efficiency. I remember Intel was big, and then they diminished. You have Samsung Electronics, which is a Korean company, it looks like, right? And looks like they do 11% of the global market. Despite challenges, Samsung's semiconductor division reported an operating profit of $767 million. That's their profit, not their revenue. Micron aims for over 20% market share in high bandwidth memory. Okay. Analysts expected an EPS of 621. So Micron sounds good. Global Foundries holds about 5% of the global foundry market, focusing on mature nodes. Okay. Texas Instrument, they do analog and embedded processing chips rather than leading edge nodes. So we don't want nothing to do with Texas Instruments. And so we can see this. So here's a summary table. You have TSM, 90%. They're freaking amazing. What an amazing company. If ultimately we have to bet on this idea that China has enough struggles and the last thing they want to do is have a war. That would be devastating to their country if they got into an actual war while they're in a trade war, while they have a real estate bubble. This is why I learned this stuff, because it tells me whether or not there's an edge here. You have Intel, their chip market share is declining. We can go look at their so if we want to dig deeper into this, right, we can go look at their earnings calls and see what the CEOs and their executives are saying. Samsung Electronics, they do about 11%, give or take. Global Foundries, they say 5%, 8% annual growth. Oh, that was Q1 profits. Micron is targeting 20% of HBM. I need to know what that is. So let's look that up. God, I love ChatGPT. You know how impossible this was back in the day? I used to have to read books to get answers to this stuff. What is high bandwidth HBM? Is it competitive with TSMC. They serve different functions. And okay, so it's not competitive, but it's a critical component used inside of TSMC power chips. Okay. Does Micron have competition in this space? And if so, do they have a moat? They have strong competition. But they supply, look, these people supply, they're number one. Whoever the hell this company is number one. And Micron is late, but they're being aggressive and they're targeting 25% of market share. Is public. Bro, I'm learning so much right now. All right, with that being said, I think what I want to do is I want to look up Samsung and I want to look up TSMC. So that's what we'll do. They say it's a big deal right now. All right, so a moat in the semiconductors typically comes from process superiority, deep customer ties, especially with companies like NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel, manufacturing scale, patents. Okay, so Micron's moat today is emerging. So they're saying that they have technology that's possibly better than their best competitor, okay? Customer gains. Reports suggest Micron secured a design win with NVIDIA for future generation chips. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay. They have deep existing partnerships with NVIDIA, mass production at scale, first mover advantage in brand trust and HBM. Future moat, they win more AI chip customers. They maintain or extend, okay, they scale production efficiently. So this is a publicly traded company. So we're going to look up KRX, we're going to look up TSMC, and we're going to look up all of these companies. No, that's not it. Oh. It's in the Korean exchange. What am I talking about? KRX is the Korean exchange. Can I even, let me see. Here it is. And I don't even know if I want to buy in the Korean exchange, to be honest. I don't even think I can look this up here. Let's see. All right, so annually we can see they've been growing, their price is down, they're profitable with their EBITDA, they have a bunch of free cash flow, earnings per share has been growing a little bit, their cash versus debt, they got 12 billion in debt, but they got 10 billion in cash, and they can pay off their debt right now if they wanted to. It's weird that they're paying dividends, but they're paying some type of dividends. Return on invested capital, return of capital. So, I'm sorry, return of capital, not on capital. Return of capital. So they're doing dividends paid, 600 million. They're buying back shares, and then they just gave out some more shares. But for a while there, they were buying back shares. Valuation has gone down. Their expenses, operating expenses, is 400 million. Their marketing and sales is 800 million. Their capital expenditure is $3 billion. That's good. Research and development is $3 billion. That's pretty good. So this is a healthy company. I don't see an issue with this company. Healthy. Let's see prices for the last year. Okay. Last 5 years. So at its peak last year it was way up here. So it's not at like a 52-year high or anything like that. It's just something to watch. It's not something I'm going to invest because it's in the Korean exchange, but cool. Let's look at Samsung. Same thing, a whole different exchange, but you guys can see Samsung looks amazing. The fact that, in the beginning of the year it was $40, now it's at 27. Revenues keep increasing. Quarterly revenues are down a bit. I wonder what's going on there. And it's probably because, the problem with Samsung, I think, look at their free cash flow. It's horrible. But they're profitable. They're a profitable company. The problem with Samsung is they're buying back stocks. I don't think that semiconductors move the needle enough for Samsung. They have too many products. So I don't love Samsung. It's worth $9 billion. Let's look at TSMC, which is a freaking amazing company. But huge red flag, right? And that's why the stock is down. If we look at the stock, at its peak, it was $223 a share. Now it's at $172 a share. Revenues keep going up every single year. Quarterly, it keeps going up. Even today, EBITDA is profitable. Look at all the free cash flow. It's such a great company. Look at the cash versus debt. 30 billion in debt, 83 billion in cash. They're buying back stock. What a great company, but it's scary, boy. This is a beautiful company. Are y'all willing to make the bet? Are y'all willing to bet on it? I feel like, those concerns are priced in, right? But again, there's an opportunity cost for every single thing, every decision you make here, there's an opportunity cost. Let's look at Micron. Remember we talked about Micron? And they're not a competitor, but they have a lot of potential to grow as well. So let's take a look at them. And you can see annually, it's kind of all over the place. It's not as sexy. Quarterly, they're growing. They're growing, but it's not as sexy. Look, it's a lot more volatile. They've got some stuff to figure out here. Share prices went from $109 to $80. Return of capital, they're paying dividends, but they're buying back stocks as well. Look at their debt. They have $11 billion in debt. They have $8 billion in cash. They can't pay back. It would take them a couple years to pay back all that debt, which isn't terrible. Most of their expenses, they have no expenses. They have very little operational expenses, very little marketing expenses. Most of their expenses are in capital expenditures, research and development. They're hiring more people. These are all good signs, but this is ugly. Are we going to start seeing more growth here? Are you willing to bet on that? I don't know that I am. Micron's a good company. I just don't love it because it's not as sexy. Like, you want to see sexy? Look at Amazon. Look at Amazon. Oh my gosh. Amazon is a buy. But there's not a lot of growth potential here. Look at the free cash flow. Amazon is such a sexy company. Okay. All right, that's my my spiel on TSM and semiconductor stocks. I'm not ready to buy anything, but I'm gonna keep watching TSM. It might be worth it. You guys tell me. Let me know in the comments what you think about that one. What's up, Juan? How you doing, bro? All right, that bored you guys to death because we lost a lot of viewers. But it is what it is. I guess making money is boring. Making money is boring. I don't know if you guys know who Martin Shkreli is, but very controversial person. But if you listen to him just for investing, he's a very intelligent person. So while I'm looking for the next topic we're going to be checking out, let's watch this.
Investors stop to ask this question. What is your actual goal? What do you think is your probability that you can achieve it? Is it worth your time to learn this new discipline? I hate to burst your bubble, but I think 95% of people come to investing with the wrong motivations and a poor understanding of what it takes to be a successful investor. Let's go over those misconceptions. Investing is an easy way to get rich. Buying an index fund guarantees success. A few minutes a week is all it takes to be professionals. That a lucky start means you have skill. I also think most investors don't think about their goals seriously enough. You might be thinking, this guy's crazy. Everyone knows why we should all invest, to make money. But this is dead wrong, and this thinking is the cause of so much misery. There are many, many ways to make money. And in general, if you glance at the Forbes list, the very richest people made their money building, creating, and inventing things they love. Of course, there are some investors there, but funny enough, most of the people who built investing companies, more than they practiced investing, became very wealthy that way. Some very few actually did compound their way to fantastic wealth. While investing can lead to great wealth, so can any other discipline. Doctors make tons of money, so do restaurateurs and lawyers. Why do you want to invest? Oh, I know why. You may have some money tucked away and you'd like it to grow, perhaps to beat inflation at least. You've heard about the miracles of compounding interest and returns. Well, that sounds reasonable. Unfortunately, you'd be wrong again. Compounding wealth in a meaningful way requires enormous risk. You're almost certainly better off focusing on making wealth with your actual talent. Investing will distract you and at best earn you a percentage point or two more than the returns you would have gotten otherwise. There is variance, of course, and some people will do handsomely investing, but others will make a wrong step and be ruined. Why am I so pessimistic? I'm not really. I'd love for you to watch my videos. I just want you to understand that there's no light switch you can flip and make 10% a year from here on out. What then is realistic? Well, in the coming videos, I'll go deeper into returns and risks and how to decide what stocks to buy and things like that. But I want to set your expectations now. Historically, even the best investors, the real professionals, consider 10 to 20% annual returns to be outstanding performance. That's without taking absurd risks. For the average investor, realistically, you should expect returns that barely outpace inflation, maybe 3 to 5% a year after taxes and fees. If you hear somebody promising consistent double-digit returns with no risk, they're either lying, deluded, or both. I really try to focus on showing you how professional investors invest. This is more of a training course for people who want to be full-time professional investors. I don't think you can just invest from your cell phone, every now and then and hope to make good returns. I don't think that'll work at all. Professional investors train for years just to eke out a few points of outperformance. That's how tough this is. I'll cover all this in more detail soon, but I want you to keep a grounded view about what success looks like. It's not about getting rich quickly. It's about building wealth slowly, methodically, with skill, patience, and a deep understanding of risk. There's another reality you need to understand. Most investors aren't starting from a fortune. The very richest people you've heard of, like people like Michael Dell, Bill Gates, Carl Icahn, George Soros, these are people with family offices. They didn't grow their wealth from a few $1,000s into billions by picking great stocks. They built massive wealth by creating businesses. Only after that did they become extremely wealthy, so wealthy they could afford to invest only their own money through what's called a family office. You and I and most people starting out don't have that luxury. If you want to become wealthy through investing, you almost certainly need to manage other people's money, OPM. Hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, they all work that way. Even Warren Buffett, technically as OPM, he's not the only shareholder of Berkshire, for example. If you think you're going to turn $5,000 or $50,000 into a fortune through compounding alone, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Even a fantastic 10% per year return compounded over decades would be respectable, but it's not really life-changing unless you already have millions. So here's the hard truth you need to wrestle with. If no one is willing to pay you for your investment advice, why are you trusting yourself to take your own advice? Or flip it around. If you're truly good at investing, why isn't someone hiring you to pick stocks or manage money for them, or at least help them? That's the real market test. Investing isn't about convincing yourself that you're good. It's about being so good that other people recognize it and want to bet on you. If you keep that standard in mind, you'll avoid years of costly self-delusion, and you'll aim at the only target worth shooting for, which is real skill, real mastery, and eventually real wealth. There is a pervasive myth that if you just buy the S&P 500 or dollar cost average, or as some will say, that you'll do well. Historically, this has been somewhat true, right? Well, let's take a look. US equities have had positive returns over the last century, around 7%. The problem is inflation has eaten away at that return. And while stocks may have compounded 7%, inflation compounded 2% along with it. Next, there are taxes. If you plan on needing that money, you'll be levied anywhere from a 15% gain to 50% gain on capital gains tax. And by the way, you don't get a refund if you lose money. So you're down to 4%-ish at best, and possibly as little as 2.5%. Doesn't sound so great anymore. But the biggest problem of all is that you've taken a massive implicit risk. You're assuming 2 points, 2 ideas that are wildly risky. The first is that the United States is a special place. So don't get me wrong, I'm a proud American. But the American markets have done superbly well because the US has been in a special place. It may not continue to be one. Do you know history and sociology? Do you know what conditions are required to sustain economic growth? Have you considered that every empire falls? The United States may very well equal, exceed, fall short, or completely fail with respect to equity returns going forward. It really isn't possible to know what the future will be without a crystal ball. The past is gone. The past is a certain set of conditions that won't repeat itself. There's also a size problem. The US was a very small country, it could grow very fast. Now it's the biggest country in the world. Expecting it to grow extremely fast is unreasonable, and it gets more difficult as the country gets bigger. So passively hoping the S&P 500 will do well is no different from faith. We don't do faith here. That's the wrong channel. The second big assumption you're making is this long-term average return is somehow relevant to you. Even if the US will, on average, return exactly the same as the last 100 years, in the next 100 years, there's some surprises in store. First, you don't know what inflation or taxes will be. Next, there have been decade-long periods in the US where investing where investing in the market had real returns close to or even less than zero. There's no guarantees that won't happen again, or won't happen for, say, 20 years or 30 years. You could still get that 7% over 100 years, but what if there's a 10, 20, or 30-year drawdown where there are no returns? People are generally awful at statistics. We assume the past will repeat itself. This reminds me of the story about turkeys. The turkey sees the farmer come in and feed them. They get excited. Every time the farmer shows up, they're excited that they'll be fed. This happens for 364 days. Finally, on one day, namely Thanksgiving, the farmer shows up, but he's not there to feed the turkeys. Avoid being the poultry in this story. Consider the difference between mean, median, and index returns for stocks as well. There's a big difference in those. So what's the answer? Just use blind faith and go all in on equities? You could do that if you want. You won't need to watch the rest of my videos. Your financial advisor will take it from here. Do you give up and focus on your career, as I mentioned? I think that's reasonable advice. The time you spend chasing returns will probably be fruitless. Or do you learn how to invest like a professional from a professional? What would be the reasons for doing this? I've taught investing for a long time, even while I was learning it and perfecting it. The only reason I've thought of that is reasonable over these years is that you should learn investing if you want to become a professional investor. To me, that means you're going to invest professionally as a career all day, every day. Could you do it as a serious hobby, perhaps? Maybe if you're retired. Yes, it's possible, but I only advise it if you have nearly all of your free time to spend on it. This isn't some game or joke. I want you to think about investing in a new way. Pick your favorite sport, maybe baseball. Investing well is just as hard as going to the major leagues and pitching for the Yankees tomorrow. Are you ready to throw 90 miles an hour against the toughest hitter? I'm not. You're not. The only people who can do that have been practicing their whole life with the best coaches, and they have enormous talent. Do you have the talent? Do you need the talent to invest? This is debated pretty intensely among professionals. My short answer is, I don't think it hurts. And when I say talent, I mean natural talent. Preparation and training is necessary too. But natural talent is, some people feel, is like actually something required that you can never get from training. Let's go back to baseball. If you decided, you know what, Martin, I want to give it a shot. I'll pitch tonight against the Mets. The problem is, of course, no one would let you. No one's going to go through the whole production of turning the lights on at Yankee Stadium and organizing the game and selling tickets because nobody would come. But investing is a funny game. Investing is like a game of Major League Baseball where the professional batters are more than happy to play with you. Imagine Babe Ruth and Derek Jeter and Aaron Judge, star hitters. They're thrilled to be there. They know you're pitching tonight. The thing is, there are very few barriers for investing today. With brokerage apps, you can get started right away. You can play this game with the very best players at any time with a few clicks. That's all it takes. Absolutely no one will stop you from throwing your whole life savings at terrible investments. Because there's so much money at stake, especially when your money is pulled in with everyone else's, that professionals are delighted to play the game with you. They want you to play. And it gets worse. In baseball, you or I would miss the strike zone completely, right? With our terrible pitching. I'm not even sure I could throw it to the mound. If we did throw it, in the right strike zone, we'd probably get lit up each time, giving up home run after home run. Not so in investing. You may throw a strikeout in your first inning. Normally, that would be incredible. You must have a knack for pitching. But in investing, your first little success will probably be random. And this will probably lead you to believe you have skill when you don't. The easier something is to start, the more people underestimate the difficulty of mastering it. It's the illusion of simplicity. Clicking buy on a stock app feels like a game, but it's a professional blood sport. Consider chess. You may be able to learn how to play it in a day, but you wouldn't want to play Magnus Carlsen for money. The stock market is like playing the best chess players in the world for money. You better be prepared. And here's another very dangerous trap, beginner's luck. In investing, you might win your first few trades. You might double your money once or twice. You might start to think you have the knack, that you're naturally gifted, that you figured it out. You haven't. Randomness is a cruel trickster. Early success is often pure chance, not skill. And believing otherwise can lead you to taking on bigger and bigger risks, right before the market teaches you a brutal lesson. If you ever start to feel invincible, that's when you're at the greatest risk of blowing yourself up. And it's not just beginners who fall into this trap. Many professional investors build strategies that work well for years, sometimes decades, without realizing they were simply riding a style that happened to perform. Some will sell volatility without understanding the risks. Some are long bull markets or tech booms or credit bubbles. It works until it doesn't. Then they blow up, and often they don't even understand why. Success in one regime isn't the same as true investing mastery. If your results are style dependent, you might be confusing luck with skill, just on a bigger scale. Always ask yourself, am I good at investing, or am I good at investing in this environment? The difference can mean survival or ruin. If you think I'm being too pessimistic, or that investing isn't such a zero-sum game, I only have one last thing to ask you. Talk to some old-timers. Ask them if they've ever known somebody who could beat the market consistently. Someone who was just an average Joe, not a professional. Then ask them how many people they know that have blown up a trading account. In other words, lost it all. The number should be a very large ratio, maybe 1 to 100. So that leaves you. You really want to be a professional investor. Someone who is paid to invest. Someone who gets high returns, low volatility, or ideally both. I can show you what I've learned. I spent my whole life learning investing from practice and first principles. Who am I? What are my credentials? I started as an intern working for a fund called Cramer Berkowitz. This is Jim Cramer of Mad Money's hedge fund. A lot of people ask me about Cramer. I think he was an amazing trader. In fact, I know he was. He made more than 20% average annual returns, net of fees, which is an amazing record. I only overlapped with Jim for about a year before he retired. But I have to say, he's a great man, incredibly smart, talented, and generous. I don't talk with Jim anymore, but his style of trading was very specific to a certain era on Wall Street, but it helped me learn the basics of the market. I then joined an investment bank, UBS, working with my friend and a value investor named Ed Painter. Ed worked at Salomon Brothers. We worked together afterwards, and Ed has proven to be a successful entrepreneur and investor. I've spent thousands of hours chatting with Ed, debating markets and learning. After that short stint, I went to work at a so-called tiger cub called Intrepid. I'm proud to call Steve Shapiro and Ari Glass, the bosses of Intrepid, my friends 20 years later. I wasn't there too long either, but this was a really pivotal time in my growth as an investor. I started a hedge fund in 2006. In hindsight, I started too early. I still had more skills to build, more lessons to learn. The fund didn't do well, but it gave me a priceless education. How to deal with corporate management on the highest level, how to think like an owner, how to make tough decisions as a controlling shareholder. I worked with a very wealthy investor. I made a very large bet that the market would crash in 2007, about a year too early for the great financial crisis. The experience hurt, but I spent the next few years licking my wounds. I worked with my college friend Marek in the next few years, managing some of his money and getting very cerebral and philosophical about stocks. Some of the downtime during the great financial crisis was actually the best time to ask really deep questions and think about what stocks and investing in general was all about. We studied just about everything about Warren Buffett and other great investors had done during this period. Finally, I started a drug company, which operated a little bit like a private equity company where M&A
There we go. There we go. So one thing I forgot to tell you guys about this guy, he had some very questionable moral decisions that he made. He went to prison. He also bought the secret Wu-Tang album for $1 million, and he did a lot of controversial things when he was younger. Now he still does some controversial things here and there, but I just think that he's one of the very few investors that tells it how it is. He's got nothing to lose, and he doesn't have a course. Not that that's a bad thing. I think if he did have a course, I would buy it too. But he gives all this game for free, and he's honest about it, and he's going to make his money regardless. So what I like to do, I like to listen to him. I like to hear his perspective on the markets, and he also evaluates different companies. You know, he analyzes different companies. And so he's made hundreds of millions of dollars investing in the stock market. And so, you know, I just wanted to edify him because we've been listening to him for quite a bit, but I realize a lot of you guys might not know who he is.
M&A was a co-equal focus to R&D. I also personally invested at this time. This was my really successful period where everything seemed to come together. I was doing private equity style deals with my drug company, but also trading and investing for the drug company and myself. At around 32, I finally mastered the markets. I went to prison for reasons that I believe are unfair. I fought the government very hard and nearly beat them. I don't ask for sympathy. I'm doing very well right now, and I'm at the top of my game. I'm here to teach you about what I know without asking for anything in return. Sometimes I get asked why I ever did these videos and how they were received. I know millions of people watch my videos, and I get thank yous from them every single day, many times in person on the streets of New York. Many people who watch my videos have become billionaires, but of course I don't take credit for that. Those people would have succeeded with or without me. But I'm so proud that so many entrepreneurs and investors feel like the videos have helped them, even a tiny bit. The only self-interest I had at the time in 2015 was that I wanted people to see the real Martin Shkreli. I was being thrashed in an era where major media could still cancel someone. Live streaming was brand new, and the idea of being an influencer was just getting started. It would be years before you could be vocal and tell your own story. But I tried, and I think it worked really well. I also was happy to share what I knew. I knew many books were out there and were uninformed, and there were downright scammy lessons that were on finance and investing on the internet, many of which you had to pay for. Today, I have the same agenda. I'd like people to understand me a little bit better and learn whatever useful things I have to share. I also have another motive. I've created investing research software, and I would love for you to use it. I've tried to use a smattering of different tools throughout the videos, though. You'll see my package works similar to other software packages out there, and you're free to use whatever software you want. Most of my work is done in Microsoft Excel, which I unfortunately don't own, but I use a lot of the free resources out on the internet. Now, if you're serious about learning about investing, you have to commit to learning from the best. I think one of the best ways to learn investing is study Warren Buffett, Steve Cohen, and Jim Simons, David Shaw. Understand how the great investors think, not how the TikTok or YouTube day traders gamble. You should build a real academic foundation. Start maybe by reading finance journals, the academic journals like Journal of Finance. You don't have to memorize every equation, but you should know what the smartest people who are publishing in these journals are thinking. I also recommend you read the basic textbook on finance, like Brealey and Meyer's Principles of Corporate Finance. I think it's something that I started reading when I was 14, and it helps a lot to know the basics of discounting cash flow and things like that. There are a few other key books I can mention, like Margin of Safety by Seth Klarman,
Reddit,
Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits by
Reddit.
Fisher. DeMataran's website is really great.
Been on there.
He's someone that has
been on there. Listened to, he gives. So the Mataran, who he's talking about, the last person, he's a professor at what is it? The New York. What's that school in New York? I forget. But he's a professor there, and he is the father of valuation. And he actually gives his, it is a snooze fest. It is boring. But if you're interested in this stuff, he actually gives his curriculum. Hold on, I'll tell you right now. Professor at if you go to his website, he gives you his curriculum for free. So this is him right here. He has a YouTube channel. That's why I tell people all the time, oh, you're learning on YouTube? The greatest philosophers and educators and professors, like, they have YouTube channels. NYU. So he's a professor at NYU, and you can actually take his courses for free. And he does live courses, and you could be in the courses for free. And they're all in here. If you go to the playlist, you'll see his undergraduate course curriculum. It's here, 28 videos. These are the actual curriculums that he's teaching to his undergraduates and his graduates. Accounting 101. Like, this is NYU MBA programs, all of that for free, in full, available here. And people tell you can't get education on YouTube. No, you just got to be careful who you get your information from. The Little Book of Valuation is what he was famous for, right? Right here.
Hi.
And he breaks the shit down for you in a playlist. Chapter 1, he breaks it down for you.
Hi.
Chapter 2, all of that. And like, he's highly respected in the investing, especially value investing community. So, and the guy's rich. He doesn't need to be a professor at the at NYU. He doesn't need to do that. He's already rich, but he does it because he's passionate about it.
Has given a lot to the value investing instruction community. Above all, I want you to develop skills that will serve you no matter what, like thinking independently and having the discipline to question everything, including yourself. There's no shortcut, no guru, no paid course. Nothing will give you those things. There's another skill I want you to think about and nobody wants to talk about, which is to be brutally self-aware. Knowing your own strengths and weaknesses, understanding your own psychology, this matters more in investing than raw intelligence. The actual practice of investing, studying companies, analyzing stocks, is relatively simple. What's hard is putting that knowledge into action with real discipline, especially under emotional pressure.
Yep.
You need to constantly ask yourself, am I overconfident? Am I anchored to bad?
And this is why I tell you guys, man, get your bag straight first. Make sure you have a solid foundation. So whatever your main job is, your 1099, your W-2, your business, whatever that is, make sure it's solid, it's thriving. Focus on that first, because when everything is good at home, at your foundation, and you're deciding now it's time to start investing, you're less likely to make decisions that are based on situations where you're desperate. And we see that happen all the time. Real wealth is how long you stay in the markets, how long you stay in assets, not how quick you're flipping them. That's a part-time job, bro. Right? So let's continue.
To bad information? Am I chasing returns? Am I lying to myself about my real risk tolerance? If you can't stay honest with yourself, the market will do it for you, and it will hurt. Investing rewards the self-aware, the humble, and the ruthlessly disciplined. Not the smartest, not the loudest, not the most confident. There's another thing that can accelerate your journey, but only if you do it right, which is finding a mentor. If you're serious about getting better, you need to find someone who's actually done it. Someone who's made real money from investing, not just talking about it. In my view, you shouldn't even consider somebody unless they've made $100 million or more through investing.
Wow.
That might sound impossible, but it's not. Greatness often finds a way of meeting greatness. Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus, found John Carmack, one of the greatest programmers of all time, on a message board. Albert Einstein, as a young nobody, found support and advocacy from Max Planck, the most famous physicist of that era. You don't need thousands of mentors. You need one who's the real deal, and you need to show enough potential and persistence that they want to help you. But in my experience, I found that a lot of these people do want to help, but you have to, find them and be persistent, and eventually it should happen. A real mentor can save you years or maybe even decades of trial and error, but the burden is on you to be worth mentoring. Before we wrap it up, I just have one last thing I want you to think about, which is burnout. Most investors, even the most successful ones, realize a few years into their careers that they don't actually want to spend the rest of their lives reading 10Ks, researching companies, and grinding through financial statements. These are good skills to learn. They'll make you sharper, more analytical, more independent. Maybe you can work in the corporate world or as a broker. But if you don't love investing, especially the way I'm proposing you go about it, think long and hard before you commit to this path. Of course, day trading is fun. It feels exciting. It feels alive.
Yeah.
But it's not profitable over the long term. The kind of investing that I'm trying to teach you is a little bit painful. To be really profitable, there'll be pain. Long hours, doubt, frustration, boredom. But investing isn't about chasing returns. It's about building it as a discipline you can live with every day for decades. I'm 42 now. I started investing when I was 12. I begged my father to open a
42,
trading
wow.
account for me with the $2,000 that was required. That small start taught me something really huge, which is capital is important, but skill is everything. I was a poor kid from Brooklyn. I didn't come from money. I didn't have any connections. I knew that if I wanted to succeed, I couldn't rely on compounding that tiny account, even though I tried. I had to master the markets. I started working at a hedge fund, which I mentioned earlier, when I was 16. I got an early view into how investing worked. Not the fantasy, not the hype, but the hard, dirty work of real professionals trying to outsmart and outthink each other. Looking back, I wish I'd stayed even longer in apprentice mode. If you have the chance to learn under really great people, you should take it. Skills come before capital, always. Throughout the series, I'll try to point you to the best resources and show you how real investors think. It's a long road, and I'm happy you decided to go on it.
This is cool, man. This is cool. So I guess he started a series here. How old is this video? This is a day ago. Come on now. Come on now. Let's go look at Martin Shkreli's. And he doesn't have, this is a guy that deserves way more subscribers. Way more. He doesn't have a shit ton of subscribers. I mean, he does, but not enough. 79,000 subscribers. And this man is always going live. Look, 666 people are on that. I don't like that number. But you guys can see he's constantly, well, he hasn't put out any videos here, but if you go to his live streams, every day he's live streaming. Look, 11 hours, 9 hours, 6 hours. This man live streams all day. Damn. 10 hours, 11 hours. And this is why I prefer this channel. Where is it? The Shkreli Pill, I think it is, right here. The Shkreli Pill. So if you guys want to follow his channel and learn from him, this is the Shkreli pill. Although that, I don't know when that video was created. Let me see what he was wearing in that last video we just watched. Because, where is it? It was a day ago. It was this one. He was wearing this hoodie. So I got to find a live stream from his real channel that shows him in that hoodie. And then I'm going to listen to it like it's a podcast. Do you guys see him in that hoodie? 2 weeks ago. It's not looking good. It might be this one. It's not that one. It looks like he's in a hoodie here. I don't know. I'll have to find it. But nonetheless, all this shit is really, really good stuff. So there you go. I'm sharing with you guys somebody that I like to watch, a digital investing mentor of mine. But with that being said, man, I got to go on break real quick. I got to go use the bathroom. I will be right back. All right, guys, I am back. I am back. How'd y'all like that BRB screen? That's different, right? Real quick, I think I'm gonna sell some puts on SoFi, and I want to show you guys why I like SoFi. So this is SoFi, and you guys can see it's at $12. Earlier this week or earlier this month, January, it was at $17. So right now it's at $12. I sold puts on it when it was at like $9.50, at like $10 around this area. And I'm already profitable on that. I'm already going to make money. But look at the company. So annually, you guys can see it is growing like crazy. This is a great company. I'm going to start pouring money into here. So I'm going to be aggressive on it because I don't mind buying the stock and buying covered calls on it. So I'm going to be aggressive on it. You guys can see quarterly, it's continuing to grow. Members continue to grow. It doesn't have a lot of free cash flow, but that's because it's early company and it's in a lot of growth, right? But you guys can see cash and debt. It's got plenty of cash. It can pay off its debt with no problems. It's just a newer company. But I also did some research here. Employee count keeps growing. So I like the CEO. We can watch a video on it as well. I'll put it. Let's play this video right here. This is the CEO of SoFi, and let's hear him talk. Let's see if we like this guy.
The top and bottom lines, raising full-year guidance. Joining us right now, first on CNBC is SoFi CEO Anthony Noto. It's great to see you. I don't know if we've actually had the opportunity to talk in quite a while, but let's talk about these earnings. Let's talk about how you see this economy and what it means for your business.
Yeah, we're really excited about the quarter. 2025 is off to a tremendous start. We grew revenue 33% year over year. That's an acceleration. It's our fastest growth in 5 quarters to $771 million. It's really driven by great product innovation, strong branding, leading to member growth of 34% year over year. It was the largest quarter we had in member ads at 800,000 and a 35% growth in products. So our cross-buy is really working at 32% of the products coming from cross-buy. Really strong profitability. Our EBITDA was up 46% to $210 million, also a record, and earnings were very strong. We feel like we're incredibly well-positioned competitively. We're stepping on the gas. We're going to accelerate our rate of innovation, launch more products sooner, re-enter the crypto category, and really making sure we're staying in front of everyone else in our leadership position. I love our competitive position and think right now with the environment we're in that we're seeing really strong demand from our members. We want to meet that demand.
Well, let's talk about the lending business and then let's talk about the crypto business because I think there's a lot of folks who are fascinated by both. Why don't we hit crypto first? Where are you in that journey at this point?
Well, the first thing I'd say is the regulatory environment is definitely evolving, and it's going to allow us to re-enter being able to offer crypto coins in our invest product, the ability to buy, sell, or hold cryptocurrency. And we hope to be able to do that over the next 6 months or so. In our earnings call, we'll talk about the fact that over the next 6 to 24 months, we want to enter cryptocurrency and blockchain activities in a much broader and more significant way. Again, it's dependent on the evolving regulatory environment, but so far that environment's been really positive. We want to be able to offer blockchain products and crypto products across every area that we're currently in. So across lending, across paying, across investing, and as well as protecting. We think it's a technology more than anything else, and we can use it to allow people to pay easier at a lower cost, to pay faster, and over time be able to capture some of the opportunity by providing infrastructure services to third parties via our technology platform. So it really will cut across every element of our business.
What is the blockchain business and crypto business in the lending space ultimately look like to you?
Again, it's going to be subject to the regulatory environment, so I just have to caveat that. But today, we provide margin loans in our invest business where you can borrow money against your securities, against your assets. We could do the same thing with cryptocurrency. If we custody the cryptocurrency, we can provide a secured loan against that currency.
That's actually pretty dope.
Again, a lower cost of lending for our members, just like margin loans are, but an asset that they can borrow against, just as they do their home or securities in their invest account.
Right. So there's 2 things going on that I know some investors may have some confusion about. So there seems to be an effort at one level to move away from the sort of classic lending business to focus more on fee revenue. At the same time, there's been a huge growth in the lending or loan platform business. And so can you explain the distinction for those who are sort of trying to follow this company?
Sure. The first thing is to understand our mission. And our mission is to help people reach financial independence, to realize their ambitions, which means they get to the point that they have enough money to live their dreams, their American dream, have the size family they want, the size home they want, the career they want, and live where they want and retire when they want. In order to do that, we have to be there for everyone in their major financial decisions in their lives and the days in between, which mean we really have to be across everything they do: borrow, save, spend, invest, and protect. So we do have 4 great loans. We try to provide the fastest place to apply and the lowest interest rates. We have more demand for our loans than we can fulfill ourselves. So
Let's
some
go.
portion we'll do
I'm loving
ourselves,
SoFi.
and some portion we'll do on behalf of third party. So the loan platform business is really a fee-based business where we leverage our origination platform, our marketing platform, our servicing platform to underwrite loans for other people, like Blue Owl and Fortress.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So you did this. Explain though, because I don't know if everyone knows. You did this deal with Blue Owl, which is one of the big credit providers in the country, for worth about $5 billion, right? How does that work?
Yeah, the way it works is they contract with us for a specific type of credit they want underwritten. We go out and generate demand for that underlying loan. We then fulfill that loan, and they take the loan away from us within a couple of days. So it's very capital light. We don't retain any credit risk, and we don't retain any capital requirements. It's something that we're doing on their behalf that we would not otherwise do for ourselves, either because we don't want that level of volume or that credit box. We actually turn down in a year over $100 billion of loan volume. We only fulfill about $20 billion ourselves. So that over $100 billion of loan volume, other people would like to have. We focus on a high-end customer that's 680 and higher, average FICO score around 750, average income around $150,000. But there are many of other people that have the need to invest in assets at a lower credit spectrum, and we're helping them do that, in addition to some volume in our credit box that's above and beyond the volume we want to do. So it's a high-margin revenue stream, it's fee-based, and it doesn't retain credit.
What are you seeing in terms of the strength of the consumer? And I ask because there was a piece, I think, in the Wall Street Journal just this week, right, about so many people using buy now, pay later, and just putting more and more things on their credit card. You're starting to see a credit build. There's a Lending Tree survey finding Americans are using more of these services than ever before just for groceries and things, Anthony.
Sure. We're watching all the macroeconomic factors the way we would any other time of the cycle to make sure we have our early warning if there are problems. So far, we've not seen any issues with credit. In fact, our credit performance continues to improve. Our 90-day delinquencies improved again for the 5th quarter since last year in a row. We've also seen lower than expected net charge-offs and an improvement there as well. So the underlying credit's doing well, and the demand for loans are very strong. We're also seeing strong spending in our SoFi Money business. We're annualized at about $14 billion of debit spending now, and it's growing faster than our underlying member growth there, which is about 46% growth in our money product, and spending is growing even faster. Deposits are growing faster as well at 52%. And then in our invest business, where you can buy, sell single stocks or fractional shares, IPOs, alternative assets, we had our strongest engagement quarter ever, even stronger than when we launched crypto or IPOs or alternative assets, and saw an acceleration in our member growth there, up 21%. And we expect that acceleration to continue throughout the rest of the year. So we guided the full year up in addition to beating. We also guided 2nd quarter above consensus. We feel great about where the business is. We're looking for all the data points everyone else is talking about, but so far things have been pretty strong.
Anthony, do you think that's because it's a reflection of your members, a reflection of your clientele, or do you think that maybe some of those stories are being exaggerated about people needing to borrow to pay for the groceries?
I think it's a little bit of both. We definitely have a higher end customer, and the viewers should understand that. We're going after a high income customer, $150,000 income or higher, high credit, 680 or higher. So that's in our loan business. But our money business goes after everyone, and our invest business goes after everyone. So it is a reflection of the broader economy. I do think people are looking for reasons not to be bullish here because of the uncertainty. And believe me, I know how to be as bearish as anybody. And right now, we're not seeing the changes. What would scare me is if we had unemployment get up into the high 5 or 6% range. We're not anywhere close to that today. But in an environment where we have declining rates, we're going to do incredibly well. We're going to see a lot more home refinancing. We're going to see refinancing of student loans, and we're also going to see continued improvement in credit in that environment, as long as we don't go into a deep recession or have some type of liquidity dislocation. A deep recession.
So that says a lot to me. Did you guys get to see that? Were you guys watching this with me? Hopefully I was on the right screen. Or was it just showing me the whole time? Damn, don't tell me you guys didn't watch any of that. Please let me know. But just judging from what Anthony Noto, the CEO of SoFi, was sharing with us, the unemployment thing is a little bit scary. And this is why if I'm going to sell puts, it's probably going to be 30 days out. 45 days out, we got to watch those unemployment numbers. Because it can get interesting. I'm okay with collecting premium on it, and worst case, I get it at $11.50 versus $12.90 right now. But that's a good thing to pay attention to. Okay, cool, Kels, you guys seen it. So we've looked at the financials of this company, and we like the financials. So we said we liked SoFi's financials, amazing looking financials. It might be a little overpriced, but it's not a 52-week high, and I think there's a lot of demand for it. The CEO is telling us amazing information. Besides, we need to look out for unemployment. You guys, if you've been following my streams, if you've been following my videos, you know how I feel about the unemployment. You know how I feel about the economy. There's a lot going on. A lot can change, but we just don't know, and I don't think we're going to know for another couple of months. There's going to be a lot of volatility in those months, and we just got to pay attention to it. Nonetheless, SoFi, they're saying all of the right things. And so, the financials look good. They're saying all the right things. The CEO's dope. But who is our competitors? Our competitor, what is our opportunity cost? Because I can put my money in SoFi, but is there a better opportunity in the same sector, in the same industry? And so I looked at Robinhood, okay? So let's look at Robinhood. I would say that's a pretty close competitor. They're in the same, wheelhouse. And let's look at their numbers, because their numbers look great as well. You can see they continue to grow annually, right? Quarterly, they're continuing to grow. It's a profitable company. They've got free cash flow, and not here, but it's a tech company. It's brand new, and they don't have any debt. They have $10 billion in cash, so that's healthy. The valuation is down compared to its historicals. And it's a new company, but it's a $43 billion company. It's got a lot of movement that it can do. I mean, their profit margin says they're 48%, where SoFi's is at 17%. From my understanding, they don't have high profit margins like this. So I don't know how those numbers are coming in. You got to be careful with that. It's always good to go to Robinhood's website and actually look at their investor relations page and see if you can get the financials directly from the website, just in case. You just want to, because sometimes, depending on what website you're using, sometimes there can be errors with the data that it pulls in. Qualtrim is great. It's been reliable for me, but that looks a little bit off. I could be wrong. And then what I did was I asked ChatGPT to help me out with this, bro, because give me a broad view perspective of what's going on with these companies. And you can see here it says, SoFi has less users, essentially, but they're making more money from their users, and their users are staying on board longer. And it's mostly because a lot of their users, like the CEO was saying, they want to loan money to these people. They want to be their bank. They want to be everything for them. Okay, so they don't tell, this is not disclosed, I don't know why, but their primary business is digital banking, lending, and investing. Where Robinhood, they just started getting into banking, by the way, credit cards and stuff. But, they're focused on trading and options trading. And Gen Z loves Robinhood. Robinhood's interface, I think, is gorgeous. I think it's an amazing platform. The tech is dope. But SoFi has a deeper connection with their 10 million users. And long term, that's a better thing, right? So recurring revenue sources is from interest on loans, deposits, and their tech. Their recurring revenues is from gold subscriptions and cash yield. I don't love that as a profit, as like your main recurring revenue source. I have gold subscriptions, and I've unsubscribed probably 3 times since I've had it. So, that might not be the case for everyone, but I got a feeling it is. So you have net income, profitability. You have a full stack financial ecosystem, and the CEO here, he says, we're going to go even deeper with this ecosystem. And that's one of the benefits. Like, people didn't think Apple was a better company than Samsung or Android or Google or anything like that. But what people didn't realize is they were building their ecosystem so damn deep that it didn't matter if they had the fastest computers, the best chips, the craziest hard drives. It didn't even matter, right? So Robinhood has a lot of potential too, though, because it's expanding into AI, banking, wealth management, all the things that, let's be honest, SoFi kind of already has. So anyways, you guys can, screenshot this if you want. If you want to look at the rest of this, screenshot it now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Cool. If you didn't screenshot it, just rewind it. You can screenshot it if you want to. Strength and weakness overview. And this is pretty cool. So user depth, we knew SoFi was going to win this. Revenue stability, we knew SoFi was going to win this because of the loans. You know what I mean? User growth is a draw. So SoFi is growing faster on year to year, but it's still a smaller company. Profit margins is a draw. Both are very profitable in Q1. Tech innovation, that's what I said. I said Robinhood's app is so smooth and it's so smart. And when you're doing option trading, it makes it so easy. It reminds me of Apple. So they both have Apple strengths because the UI for Robinhood is just so easy to use. Regulatory safety, Robinhood has its issues with the way it's structured. We saw what happened when with the whole craziness with the GME, GameStop, and the short sellers squeezes, and what the CEO's decision making was there. Remember that? And then the speculative upside, Robinhood wins that. So because cryptos, options, higher volatility gains. Okay. So this is the final verdict. Long-term core hold, and that's what I'm looking for. SoFi is the better choice. Short-term, if you want high growth bet, Robinhood's the better choice. When I'm doing options, it's because I want to, and I'm selling puts. It's with companies that I'm willing to hold long term. So SoFi wins there. Although Robinhood is great too. I've sold puts on Robinhood because I'm not doing long-term puts. I'm doing 30-day puts, 45-day puts that I'm selling. And so I'm okay with doing Robinhood. I have a open put that I sold now with Robinhood, and it's profitable. It's profitable right now. I can close it out and make 70% of the premium right now. Okay, let's continue. So I also wanted to look at the CEOs. I know a little bit about both the CEOs, but this is what's beautiful about ChatGPT. It just breaks it all down for you so easily, right? So, these are just little fun facts of the CEO here, their background, all that stuff, and their leadership style, right? So I think automatically, right off the rip, the better CEO is going to be the SoFi guy. Just because I can just trust that guy a little bit better. So here's a comparison overview. Background, military, investment banking, tech. Vlad is an immigrant, mathematician, tech entrepreneur. Education, West Point, Wharton. Vlad's is Stanford, UCLA. Leadership is building a full-service digital bank, expanding accessible financial markets. SoFi's diversification and public listing, pioneering commission-free trading. They were pioneers in that. Although there are pros and cons to this, right? Scaling a broad financial platform is the challenges for SoFi is scaling a broad financial platform. The challenges for Robinhood is managing regulatory scrutiny and platform trust, right? So that is a constant issue, and it's been an issue for Robinhood. I think it's harder to scale a broad platform. It's easier to be more focused, but what Robinhood is focused on has a lot of regulatory scrutiny, right? And so the vision is comprehensive financial services for all stages, and Robinhood is democratizing finance through technology. Here's the thing with this is I think that this vision, they are the pioneers of that, but there's so many other brokerages that just kind of adapted and just copied and pasted what Vlad was doing kind of instantly, that Fidelity has democratized finance through technology, and so has Schwab. They're maybe not as polished as Robinhood is, but they got the money to do it. Fidelity's app is compared to what it was a couple years ago. It's pretty nice. It's pretty sleek. Speaking of which, I'm gonna go ahead and make this trade, guys. So I'm gonna sell puts for 30 days out. Okay, the strike price is $11.50. Okay, I'm collecting a premium. I'm doing 30 contracts. I'm collecting a premium of $910. Let's do the math real quick on this, though. Okay. So let's do the math on this real quick. So 100 divided by, what was the strike price? I said it was $11.50. And the premium that's being collected, the premium being collected is 33 cents, I think it was. And so the return on that is 2.86%, almost 3%. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger here. You guys ready? Let's go ahead and place the order. And boom, we're in there. So just sold puts on 30 contracts for SoFi. I'm going to make $910, probably less. I'll probably close when I'm at like 70 or 80% profit. If it's early enough. So far, everything's been profitable for me the last month. In like the first week, I hit that 70% number. And so there's no point in waiting it out. I just close it and I get into another trade there. So yeah, we're in on SoFi. I've done my research. You guys know why I went in on SoFi. And I did the trade live here. We'll see how it goes. Worst case scenario, if I get assigned those shares, I like SoFi at $1.50. I'll sell covered calls on SoFi, and I'll get out of it once it's profitable. Okay? That's the key there. That was fun. That was freaking fun. Now, with that being said, man, we've been doing a lot of, I know some of this goes over your heads because I know my audience. So let's just watch this video on dollar cost average versus buying the dip. This is a very beginner focused investing in the stock market video, but it is fundamental and it's important. I haven't watched it, but we'll watch it together and I'll give you guys my 2 cents, what I've learned over the years. So let's check it out.
Buy stocks every month or buy only when the stock price is down? Which investment strategy is better for you? In the video, we will see a study that analyzes which strategy is the best for long-term investments, dollar cost average, or buy the dip. Hi, welcome to The Holder Investor. If you want to receive more videos about investing, please consider subscribing to this channel. The dollar cost average, or DCA, is when you buy stocks in regular intervals, can be monthly, weekly, or in any other period. The key point of this strategy is that the purchases occur regardless of the asset's price. In this way, you don't need to guess if the stocks are going up or down. You will buy periodically regardless if it is a bull or a bear market. On the other hand, the buy the dip strategy is when you only buy stocks when they are going down. As the stock's price dips, it may present an opportunity to pick up shares at a discount price.
And I want to tell you guys something. One of the reasons why I tell you guys to focus on your foundation, on the main business first. Like if you have a job, try to figure out how you can work your way up and get as many raises as possible. And if you got to leave the company to go to another one and you get a pay raise there, do that. But you got to make as much money as you can from your main gig. If you're self-employed or you have a business, you got to do whatever you can to increase revenues and keep as much money in the bottom line. And live below your means so you have as much extra capital saved that you can save as much money as possible so you can invest. When you do that, you're able to do both. You're able to dollar cost average and buy the dip. So what I do is no matter what, I put $1,000 into my brokerage account, no matter what. And no matter what, I put about $500 a month, a week into indexes. So the S&P 500, VOO, and QQQ, the NASDAQ. I put $500 a week into there, which means I have $500 left over. And that's just kind of like a buffer that I'm building in my brokerage account. But I'm collecting 4.5% interest on that because your brokerage account still pays you interest like a high yield savings account does. Okay. So it's not like that extra $500 is sitting in the account and not making money. But because I'm dollar cost averaging and I can put a decent chunk of change every single week into my account, No matter what, whether it's up or down, I'm buying stock shares every single week. And then when I see a dip, like the past month, we had a crazy dip. I think the market in the last minute was like 5% and 5%. It may not have been 30%, but it was a lot. And what did I do with those crazy dips? Started throwing lump sums in. I kept dollar cost averaging. I still was doing my $500 a week. But then because I had some money in my brokerage account and I make good money from my main gig, bro, I wasn't putting 1,000 into my brokerage account. I was trying to transfer as much as I could. And then I was going, when there was a dip, I was throwing $2,000 in, $3,000 in, $5,000 in every time there was a crazy dip. Because you cannot time the market. You can't time the market. But if you're paying attention to what's going on in the world, because these things get priced in, how the market's reacting to current events and politics and geopolitical conflicts, all of these things affect the market. And so you can get an idea of whether or not this is a real dip or the market's crashing, it's got more to go. But either way, okay, I may not put $5,000 in on this dip because we still don't know what's going on with tariffs, but I'll put in $2,000 because next week when we hear more about tariffs, it's either going to dip more or it's going to go up some more. And so then I can make a decision then whether I want to put another lump sum in, right? And you do that throughout the whole process, so you're able to dollar cost average and buy the dip. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, but let's continue.
The problem here is that you have to know how far the stock is going down. You need to time the market to make this strategy work. Nick Maggiuli made a study comparing the dollar cost average and the buy the dip strategies. For dollar cost average, he considers an investor who invests $100 every month. And for buy the dip, an investor who saves $100 each month and only buys when the market is in a dip. For this scenario, he considers that the investor would know exactly when the market is at the absolute bottom between any two all-time highs. Logically, it seems like buy the dip can't lose. If you know when you're at the bottom...
Yeah, so you can see what the 52-week low is, right? And if you're at the 52-week low, hell yeah, that's the bottom. Lump sum. Throw that thing in there. Throw some extra cash in there, right? I wanted to show you guys. So with Robinhood, I already sold a put for Robinhood. I don't know if you guys can see right here. And I'm already up 50% on that premium. And that doesn't close until May 30th. I got to leave in a little bit. So I still got 3 weeks. But the moment that this goes to 70% in the next few days, I'll close this trade because I'm not going to wait 3 weeks for it to get 100%. But I'm already up $400 in the last week on that trade. So, I'll do it again with Robinhood. As long as the fundamentals are the same, I'll do the same trade with Robinhood, just sell puts. And if I get assigned the stock, I like the company because I know that in the future, it's going to get into things like mortgage loans. There's plenty of growth potential there. I don't love it more than SoFi, but I love it almost as much. It just has different cons, right? Let's continue to listen to this. After this video, I got to go get my kids from school. So I'm a father. I'm a family man, if y'all didn't know.
You can always buy at the cheapest price relative to the all-time highs in that period. However, if you actually run this strategy, you will see that buy the dip underperforms DCA over 70% of the time.
Okay, that's another thing. So buy the dip underperforms. That's if you're only buying the dip. I do both. And I use my main gig, my high-paying income to buy the dip. That's the point I'm making. So you can perform really, really well that way. Okay. The other thing is, he had mentioned earlier, let me see if I can catch
to the all-time highs in that period. You're at the bottom, you can always buy at the cheapest price relative to the all-time highs in that period. However, if you actually run this...
So when you're buying at the all-time high because you dollar cost average no matter what, you guys realize that's not that big of a problem because there's always going to be all-time highs. Before Nvidia skyrocketed, it was at an all-time high. Before Tesla made millionaires, it was at an all-time high. So you don't necessarily want to stop investing in a company because it's at an all-time high. Remember during the pandemic when the stock market was hitting all-time highs and people were like, there's no way this is going to keep going. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And what did the stock market do? It went bonkers. So the people who kept dollar cost averaging kept making money because an all-time high is temporary. This is why dollar cost averaging matters. And this is why they're saying if you're doing dollar cost averaging versus buying the dip, dollar cost averaging wins 70% of the time. But I do both because my main gig, I'm not dependent on investing. You shouldn't be dependent on investing. That's how you make bad decisions that are desperate. And that's how you sell stocks and you pull money out your brokerage account and you never build any long-term wealth. That's why I tell you guys, your foundation, your focus, your main thing, you need to be good at it. You need to make money, man. You got to make income, bro. Okay? The stock market isn't going to save you, make you financially free overnight. All right, let's continue.
You will see that buy the dip underperforms DCA over 70% of the time. From 1995 to 2018, the buy the dip strategy overperformed the dollar cost average, but as we can see in this image, it was very close. In this period, the buy the dip wins because of the 2003 and 2009 dips. Buy the dip will outperform DCA when big dips happen earlier in the time period. If we look over long-form DCA...
So let's go back to this. See this? All-time high. If you didn't buy there, if you didn't dollar cost average, you would have missed this whole ride up. And then this is an all-time high. Still buy. And then all-time high. And then all-time high. And then all-time high. But you see these dips? I'm buying there too. I'm buying these dips too. You see this dip? I'm buying that dip too. And look. Okay.
DCA when big dips happen earlier in the time period. If we look over longer time frames, historically, buy the dip doesn't outperform most of the time. This chart shows the amount of outperformance from buy the dip as compared to dollar cost average over every 40-year period over time. The dollar cost average outperformed the buy the dip more than 70% of the time.
Crazy.
In this other image, we can see a comparison from 1975 and 2014, and DCA outperformed buy the dip. This happens because while you wait for the next dip, the market is likely to keep rising and leave you behind.
Yep.
JP Morgan Asset Management's 2019 retirement guide shows the impact that pulling out of the market has on a portfolio. From 1999 to 2018, if you missed the top 10 best days in the stock market, your overall return was cut in half. The return went from positive to negative by missing the 20 best days of the market over 20 years. When trying to time the market, you can end up missing these days, waiting for a fall that will take a long time to happen, and, by doing so, lose the potential return of some of these days. What makes the buy the dip strategy even more problematic is that we have always assumed that you would know when you were at every bottom. Unless you have a crystal ball, you will not be able to achieve that. With a variation of buy the dip, where the strategy misses the bottom by 2 months, DCA overperformed the buy the dip 97% of the time. So, I think that the best option is the DCA, as you don't have to time the market, and the study shows that it will have a good chance of overperforming the buy the dip strategy. If you like the video...
There you go. So this was great beginner stuff. Definitely important to understand. So I hope that helped you guys. Tony asked, how much do you think SoFi will drop? I don't know. I don't think it'll drop below $11.50. Right now, I think it's at like $12.90. But that's not the point. The point is, I don't care if it drops below $11.50. It'd be nice to not get assigned and keep collecting premiums, right, and not get assigned. But if I do get assigned at $11.50, the point is I don't think in the long term it's going to go. It's going to keep going down. I think if I can buy it at $11.50, I got it at a good price, and I'll hold it long term. I can sell covered calls on it, and I'll be profitable if I hold on long enough. And it's a great company. So that's why it's important to look at the financials and the fundamentals of the company, because you have to buy companies you think are going to be around 3 to 5 years from now. That's the only way, because something is not not profitable until you realize the gains or you realize the losses. And the only time you realize the gains or you realize the losses is when you close the trade, is when you sell, right? But if it drops below 1150, because that's my strike price, and I get assigned those shares, then I'll just keep them until they go back up and it's profitable again. You get what I'm saying? So I don't think in the next 30 days, though, it's going to drop below 1150. I don't think so. That's part of why I look at what is the price right now in comparison to what it was before. And so when I look at this chart, you know, something can happen with tariffs or interest rates or something like that. Something can happen. The Federal Reserve can make an announcement. Trump can say something where this tanks. But, you know, in the beginning of the year, it was at $17.50, $18. It was at $18. So I think a lot of that forecast is already priced in. That's why it's dropped so much already. And so I don't think any tariff news or anything like that, you know, we kind of have an idea that something is possible. And so it's priced in is what I think. Unless something new happens that we weren't expecting, which I think there might be a 20% chance that happens, right? Unless that happens, there's a 20% chance, you know, this shouldn't drop below 1150. And the reason why I know there's a 20% chance is when you're doing your options, when you're looking at your options chain. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't even showing you guys my screen. This is what I was showing you. Hold on. It was this one. So this was at its high, at its peak in the beginning of the year was $18. If I can find it. There it is, $18. And so you guys can see it's dropped a bunch ever since, you know, the elections have happened, these trade wars, all of these problems have happened. I think a lot of that stuff is priced in already. So something really shocking has to happen, I think, for it to drop to, you know, that 1150 mark, which is down here. I think it's in an upwards trend, but like I was saying earlier, I know there's a 20% chance that it can drop to below 1150 because when you look at the options chain here, all right, you look at the delta, this 0.22 means there's a 22% chance that it will fall below $11.50. I like those odds. And so if I do enough of these trades every single year and I win 10 out of 12 times, for the year, I will be profitable. And even when I lose, I get assigned the stock of a good company that I would buy anyways. If I hold on to it long enough, those still might become wins. So my probability, you know, this is why I love selling puts, is because it's not like you're day trading. It's not like it's betting, but the odds are in your favor. Okay? If you're smart enough, if you're managing your risk, if you're not dumping all of your cash into this, and I bought 30 contracts, I didn't buy 1,000 of them, right? Because I'm managing my risk. All right. Hopefully that helps, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow on the next live stream. Thank you guys for checking it out, guys. I live stream every single day. So I'm enjoying this. I love this. If you guys got any questions, please do comment. I do check out the questions in the comments because it allows me to understand what you guys want to check out more of. We're doing health, wealth, faith, current events, barbershop conversations. I've been a barber for 15 years. I was a barber for 15 years. I haven't cut hair behind the chair in about 5 years. I own 10 barbershops. I own a portfolio of multiple businesses that do about 8 figures a year. I got into the business side of the barbering industry, and then I started to diversify. Now I'm in truck manufacturing. I own an accounting firm. I've done quite a bit in the last 15 years by educating myself. I have no background in business. I'm a college dropout, had a 1.7 GPA in high school. So I ain't the smartest tool, you know, in the chest, but you know, I'm an avid learner, and you know, we can do this together. I'm fully transparent. I am not a guru. I'm definitely somebody who, like Martin Shkreli said, is successful in their own right. I don't need to do this. You know, if I wanted to retire tomorrow, I could. But I see what's going on in the world, and I think education is the biggest way that we can change these things. Whether it's personal development, it's faith, it's wealth, it's health. I'm on top of all of that. And I'm doing it also because of my family tree. So if this is the type of content that you love, do check out my live streams every single day. Check out the videos that I drop. Do comment, like, subscribe, share the channel. I appreciate y'all.